Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Turning all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
All right. Yeah. Fade to Black. How you doing? Yeah. All right. Enough of the goofing off. Let's get the show cracking. This is Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Tuesday, February 10th, 41 days into the new year, 324 days left. As always, we are live from the truthfunders.com studios right here in downtown Burbank, California. Do you have a book, an expedition, an invention, or paranormal documentary you need to get funded? Go to truthfunders.com. Truthfunders, the number one source of backing your project into the fringe. Just go right to jimmychurchradio.com, Truth Funders. The link is right there in the middle of the page. Go pick out a project, back it. That's what you do. For KJCR and the Game Changer Network, I am your oh so humble host, Jimmy Church. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. Welcome. This is Fade to Black. Big salute to the proud men and women in uniform all around the world fighting the good fight for us, for without them there is no me, there is no you, there is no us. And you could not hear me right now. I need you to think about that for a second. All right. Let's go. Let's get the show cracking. Podcast. You know what to do. Support the show. $2. Go to jimmychurchradio.com. Click on the podcast page. It's just another source for you to listen to Fade to Black. All those networks are getting ticked off. One tick at a time. Check, 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 check. Got TuneIn button down. We got TSL. Oh, good. I'm just scrolling back through the tweets. My goodness gracious, things are on fire tonight. TalkStream Live, tune in. Go and click. If you're listening right now on jimmychurchradio.com, you're probably on Spreaker. I don't know. But tune in. Clicking on tune in really helps us in the rankings. Should have that phone number, the secret phone number. For tune in tomorrow, or I'm sorry, TalkStream Live tomorrow. Getting close, man. And the last thing before we start to, there's TalkStream Live right there. Look at that. The tweet just came in. You gotta love that. TalkStream Live. Go Beckley Tepe. Who did that? Is that who? Oh, man. Somebody over at TalkStream Live is funny. That's funny. I wonder if that's in the, that's like automatic, right? Right at the drop dead, it's 7 o'clock. That tweet goes out. Go Beckley Tepe. Fade or not, TalkStream Live. We love TalkStream Live. Yeah, we made that TalkStream Live Power 50 list for 2014. How cool is that? Faders.org. Another request just came right through right before the show tonight. I got my code. I'm a Fadernaut. Welcome to the Fadernaut family. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. That's what you want to do. Tonight, we have Wallace Thornhill joining us live from Australia. Wallace and the Electric Universe. This is a man that is a game changer. That's why he is on the show tonight. I had a long animated talk with Wallace today, as you can imagine. So excited to have him on the show. And just what this show is about is what he is about. Rolling that rock uphill. And for him, it's a big one. Tonight, Wallace Thornhill, the Electric Universe, how the universe was or wasn't formed. We're going against the standard tonight on this show. It's going to be amazing. We're going to take a couple of other dudes to task, too, as well. Studio Dome speakers, the SD1. Get yours today. Go over to jimmychurchradio.com. I got, and click on the link for Studio Dome. Enter the code Jimmy and get $40 off. That is a Fadernaut special deal right now. $40 off the list price of $99.99. That's right. You get it for $59.99. It is a really cool Bluetooth voice-activated speaker, and it sounds amazing. $59.99 and get free shipping. I got an email today from France. Jimmy, do I get free shipping to France? I doubt it. I doubt it. France? Man, Canada would be pushing it. All right. So anyway, $59.99, get free shipping. Enter the promo code Jimmy, Jimmy. It's all right there. Go click on the link. Help support the show. Studio Dome and that company is amazing. It's one of the best warranties in the business. And I'm going to say this right now. I'm going to say this on the record. You have any issues with that speaker, you call them and you drop my name. You call them and tell them you're a Fadernaut. I'm not joking, and watch what happens. I'm not kidding. I laid it down. Well, and they offered. Fadernauts are treated like royalty over at Studio Dome. $99.99, $40 off, $59.99, free shipping. And you got to have one of these. You have to. And then just imagine, once you get that speaker, get it hooked up to your phone, and you pop that thing down on the table, what I want is somebody to tweet me one day and go, Jimmy, I got the speaker on the table. Give me the Barry White. And I'll vibrate that thing right off the top of the table. It's that cool. All right? That sounds fun, actually. Coming up, Contact in the Desert, May 29th through the 31st. Joshua Tree, California. Just like last year, there's going to be, 2,500, 3,000, 4,000 people out there in Joshua Tree. You want to come out and hang out with us? We got a bunch of special events that we are doing out there. We're going to be broadcasting Friday night, May 29th, in front of 200 or 300 people. I can't remember exactly how many people the hall holds, but we'll be broadcasting from there. We'll probably crank through just like we did last year. We brought, I think it was 12, 13, 14 guests right across. Last year we had Mike Barrow, we had Linda Moulton Howe, we had John Anthony West, we had Joe Bookman. You know what? I'm brain freezing right now. We had a whole just lined up coming across, and we're going to do the same thing this year. So you're going to want to come out and hang out for that. I will also be hosting the Montauk Chronicles, the film, with director Christopher Garetano. And this will be the West Coast premiere of the film. We're going to showcase that. And then right after, you'll be able to do a question and answer with myself and Chris Garetano, the director. Well, not with me. I'll just be standing there with a microphone. But with Christopher Garetano, it's a very, very unique opportunity for everybody. So you want to see that. And then I'm also hosting a panel, and it's called UFOs and Physics. And on that panel will be Nick Redfern, who will be with us this coming Tuesday. Richard Dolan, Steve Murillo, Mike Barra, William Brown, and I'm leaving somebody else off that list. but there's a fifth or a sixth on that panel. Oh, man, I can't believe I just forgot. But I'll be hosting that panel, too. So we've got a whole slew of events that we're going to be doing. Also, that one of the things that you might want to check out, we will be set up outside of the main hall there with a camera crew supplied by Contact in the Desert, a full crew. And we are going to be interviewing the speakers right there, one-on-one. So that's what you want to just come out, man, and just stand right behind me. I'll be right there interviewing some of the coolest, most informative researchers, authors, directors, and experiencers right there. I'm telling you, Contact in the Desert is going to be great. Also, we will be giving away a whole slew of tickets. Now, going to be giving away tickets. To get those tickets, you're going to have to do a few things. One, you have to listen to this show. That's the first thing. Second, you're going to have to follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Third, you better show up at Contact in the Desert. That's all I got to say. Those tickets are $400. I think that's what they are. I'll look that up and confirm for the weekend. It's a huge event, and you're going to want to get your hotel rooms. You can also camp there too, by the way. They'll be camping. So that's it. That's Contact in the Desert, May 29th through the 31st, Joshua Tree. More information, just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on Future Events, click on Future right there, take you right to the website. Okay? All right. Let's get this show cracking. We've got so much going on. We now have 3 different ways to listen to the show. We have Spreaker, we have TalkStream Live, we have TuneIn. iHeartRadio we're working out the technical issues on that. We're right there. We're close. And excited about that. If you are listening to 2 shows right now, you got a little echo, you're probably listening to 2 sources at once. Go turn one off. You wanted all of these sources. Now you got them. Now you got to control them. Didn't have any complaints yesterday, so I guess you guys are smart. You figured it out. Impressive. Today, actress Laura Dern is 48 years old. She makes the list for one movie, Wild at Heart. Still one of the creepiest movies ever made. Today, singer Roberta Flack. That's right. 78 years old. Some of the greatest songs ever, like Killing Me Softly with his song, Where is the Love, The Closer I Get to You, and one of the greatest recordings of all time, The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face. If you want to hear me sing that, just let me know. Shoot me an email. I'll pop you an MP3. She won a Grammy for that in 1973, by the way. Our dead guy birthday today is, moment of silence, please, Cliff Burton, bassist of Metallica, 1962, tragically cut short in 1986, age of 24. Cliff died, and we all remember when. Cliff died when his tour bus skidded and flipped over in Europe, throwing him from his bunk where he was sleeping, and it threw him out the window, and he was crushed by the bus when it rolled on top of him. And that was in 1986. I will not forget that day, and you know what? I really don't want to remember it. Cliff, you're in a better place. Cliff Burton was his birthday today. Happy birthday, Cliff. And I know you're listening. All right, now. So let's fire up Twitter. Let's do it right now. Crazy stuff going on. Let's do this. What is your favorite? You got to go vintage. Got to go vintage on this one. What is your favorite Cliff Burton riff? Ho, 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 ho. You got to love Fadernauts. How many shows can you go to? How many shows can you go to where we discuss the universe, physics, UFOs, ghosts, deja vu, and Göbekli Tepe, and Cliff Burton in one show? Somebody help me, please. And you know what? Fadernauts, I love you for this. I just love you for this because right now, watch this. Just watch this. I'm going to see these Metallica songs fly across, and that is the audience that is here. We're not all about Metallica. I bet you right now I could drop ABBA or Barry Manilow And there it is. Fade to black. Michael K. Michael K. Michael K. in the house. First tweet across. First tweet across. Fade to black. You know, they'll kill them all, though. Am I wrong? But fade to black. There you go. Michael, we got to get something in the mail to you, brother. That was good, fast, and quick. All right. Where was I? Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. If you're on Spreaker, if you're on TalkStream Live, or if you're on Jimmy Church Radio right now, whatever, I think all of those links are on each page. If they are not, we'll get them there. But nonetheless, just go over to jimmychurchradio.com. Follow, like, subscribe. It's all easy to find. Everything is Fade to Black. Fade to Black or Jimmy Church Radio. Easy enough to do. All right. Tonight we have Wallace Thornhill, live from Australia, live in the Electric Universe. Call-in numbers 323-825-5045. Judging from the amount of email that I personally received today, I don't know what went through the website and went through WoWo and Kovar and what they didn't release to me. But I got a buttload of questions and comments about Wal and Wallace. We're not that informal yet, so it's still Wallace until we get him on the show. But wow, I mean, I thought I was fired up. It is going to be a show tonight. Excited. You can shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Simple enough to do. Go over to the website. Go to the contact page where we use non-NSA specially encrypted servers. Got an email today from Ben Miller. Ben says, "It has always been a pleasure to hear Colonel Randall. Thanks for having him on your show. How many times have we, in the UFO community of listeners, been disappointed by the new evidence that proves UFO contact? Every time. How we still hold on is the real mystery." And you're right about that, Ben. How are we brain damaged? We're all desert gold prospectors hoping to find the mother lode, slogging for years around the desert with our faithful mule, Jenny. I'd better go prepare for the prospecting tools for tomorrow's digs. That's from Ben Miller. Couldn't have been said better. Today on the internet, we had Kevin Randall on the show last night talking about the Kodachrome slides, the two alleged purported alien pics from 1947. They're going to do a big thing down in Mexico on May 5th, 10,000-seat arena, where they are going to announce this. Jaime Maussan did the press conference this week with Tom Carey and Don Schmidt. And so what happened today, there was a leaked picture of one of the slides that was taken from the presentation that they did, the press conference. Apparently was something that they shouldn't have done, but it slipped. Somebody took a picture of the slide. That slide went out. Now it's all over the internet. And I said this last night on the show, and I mean this. Once that gets out like that, there's too many people out there that know stuff. They know stuff. Maybe they'll know where the slides were taken from. Maybe they'll have the original sets. They'll know the photographer. You know, something like that could happen. But you know what else? And I said this last night with the famous J-Rod photographs, how those were debunked. What happened? Now there's pictures floating around on the web of a museum down in Mexico with the same alien. It looks, okay. I looked at the pictures today. I'm not going to post them because I'm not going to be part of this. I'm not going to back this, and I'm not going to debunk this. I'm not. I'm going to stay in the middle. I'm going to let it play out. I'm going to let other people play it out because I just want to know the truth. But I'm not getting on that bandwagon. But today I looked at the photographs. And although I'm going to say similar, too much so. I mean, right? But there was also some other issues with it. And specifically for me, the torso on the slides, the torso section, the stomach and the chest are flat, almost sunken in a little bit. To my eyes, it could be the angle. And then the slides or the pictures of this alien in this museum down in Mexico, which is, a fake alien, it's bloated. Okay, the other features are right there: the length of the arms, the shape, the head, the face. But there's something wrong that's wrong with the body. but I did take a really close, hard look. And I was, in a weird way, I was kind of relieved. I was relieved both ways. One, that it was debunked, and one, that it wasn't. In my eyes, I'm like, okay, we don't have an answer here. It's about to get crazy. And now that photo is leaked, and please don't ask me, and I don't even want to look over at Twitter right now, and people asking where those are. I'm not going to post them. You can go search for them yourself on the web. Go do it. It's out there. All right. Okay, let's go. Let's see. Oh, man, I did it again. Did I do it again? I'm blowing it, man. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll come back with the news, and then Wallace Thornhill be joining us live from Australia. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. At JChurchRadio. Hashtag F2B. That is the Sandbox. Come hang out with the Fadernauts tonight. It's a cool place. We're friendly. We're fun. And you know what? It's free. Be the smart guy at the water cooler tomorrow. It's fun. You get smart. All right, I'm enough goofing off. I'll be back right after this.
You're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
My name is Nick Dominguez. Hi, I'm Rex Dominguez, and I listen to jimmychurchradio.com. Jimmy is your preacher.
Amen. This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're of the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
KJCR.
jimmychurchradio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
All right, everybody, welcome back. A couple tweets, one from the UK. Check it out. J.R. Roberts, live in the UK, 3:22 a.m., new to the Sandbox. Welcome. Hashtag F2B JR. And KF, hey, Jimmy, first-timer here, saying hello from Da Region. What's up, KF? You do want to follow us on Twitter right now. Twitter's flying by me to my left at JChurchRadio. Tonight, Wallace Thornhill will be joining us, The Electric Universe. And tonight, we're going to break it down. And we're going to break it down like you're 5 years old. Why? Because I'm 5 years old. And it's got to be broken down for me. If I get it, if I get through tonight, and I know that I will, so will you. Tonight's the kind of night that you listen to radio like this. You're going to learn something. You're going to go on a journey. You're going to wake up tomorrow, and you're going to feel like a brand new person. The sun's going to come up, and you're going to go, I listened to Fade to Black last night. Wallace Thornhill, that was amazing. My life has changed. Well, let's hope. All right, today, all kinds of breaking news. Jon Stewart is leaving The Daily Show. Yeah. And Brian Williams got suspended for 6 months without pay, or 5 million buckaroos. 5 million ducks in the pond are now missing for Brian Williams. And it just begs to just ask that question. Jon Stewart going to host the news on NBC? Maybe run for president? Jon Stewart. Heavy. Today we got the bad news. American ISIS hostage Kayla Mueller is dead. ISIS sent the family a private message over the weekend. The National Security Council spokeswoman Bernadette Meehan said, and I'm quoting here, she said, once the information was authenticated by the intelligence community, they concluded that Kayla was deceased. The message sent to the family included photos. The new information does not clarify how the 26-year-old Mueller died. We still don't know if it was that famous Jordanian airstrike or not, or we just don't know. She did send a couple of letters in the past trying to get that down. I'm extremely upset about this, but it is ISIS, and all it does is just bring the blood to a boil. ISIS has offered no proof to back up its claim other than that building that was reduced to rubble. Newsweek's official Twitter account has been compromised by individuals claiming to be members of the pro-Islamic State hacker group Cyber Caliphate, which previously has been attributed to targeting the military and other media outlets. Today, the profile picture associated with Newsweek's official Twitter page was altered to that of a masked man alongside the words Cyber Caliphate and Je suis ISIS. And posts were broadcast to the account that has 2.51 million followers that included threats to the Obama family and screenshots of what appear to be sensitive military documents. They went on to tweet, "In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, under the flag of the Islamic State, Cyber Caliphate continues its cyber jihad." While the U.S. and its satellites are killing our brothers in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, we are destroying your national cybersecurity system from the inside. Yeah, right. Yeah, days are numbered, folks. All right, enough of that. I even hate reporting on ISIS. It just bugs me. Giving them, is it publicity? Is that the word that I'm thinking? Maybe the world should just stop talking about ISIS. The world's richest sovereign wealth fund removed 32 coal mining companies from its portfolio in 2014. Now, listen to this. It's the world's richest sovereign wealth fund, citing the risk they face from regulatory action on climate change. Norway's government pension fund Global, the GPFG, worth $850 billion, was founded on the nation's oil and gas wealth, revealed a total of 114 companies that had been dumped on environmental and climate grounds in its first report on responsible investing, released on Thursday last week. The companies divested also include tar sands producers, cement makers, and gold miners. Threatened animals like elephants, porpoises, and lions grab all of the headlines, but what's happening right now to monarch butterflies around the world is nothing short of a massacre. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service summed it up in just one grim statistic yesterday. Since 1990, about 970 million monarch butterflies have vanished. It happened as farmers and homeowners sprayed herbicides on milkweed plants, which serve as the butterflies' nursery, food, and source of home. In an attempt to counter 2 decades of destruction, the Fish and Wildlife Service launched a partnership with 2 private conservation groups, the National Wildlife Federation and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, to basically grow milkweed like crazy, gangbusters, in the hopes of saving them before they are gone from this earth forever. Extinct. The extinction of other butterfly species is not unheard of. There are a bunch that have disappeared, but we need our monarch. We have seen the collapse of other pollinators like wasps and beetles and honeybees. This has to stop. Milkweed ain't that bad. What does it just look bad? You got to go out there and just get rid of it? Think about it. We're going to destroy ourselves from the inside. We are out of time. I've got like 5 more news stories to do here. What are you telling me? I'm getting the notice. I'm getting the cut sign. This is Fade to Black. Tonight, Wallace Thornhill. When we come back after the break, live from Australia, the Electric Universe. We're going to be taking your calls a little bit later. Follow us on Twitter. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. at JChurch Radio. That's what you want to do. I'll be back with Wallace Thornhill right after this. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses, only on the Game Changer Network. Tune in, TalkStream Live. Follow us right now on Twitter at JChurchRadio. That's what you want to do. Hashtag F2B. And tomorrow, Eric Von Daniken will be right here on Fade to Black. That's another show you're not going to want to miss. Tonight, I am so fired up. Wallace Thornhill earned a degree in physics and electronics at the University of Melbourne, Australia, and began a postgraduate study. Before entering university, he had been inspired by Velikovsky's best-selling book, Worlds in Collision. The lack of curiosity in mainstream science convinced Thornhill to pursue an independent path outside academia. Good for him. In 1974, during the first International Velikovskyan Conference at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, Mr. Thornhill met David Talbot and Velikovsky. On a subsequent visit to the Velikovsky at his home in Princeton, New Jersey, Thornhill posed the key question and raised the theory of recent planetary catastrophe. What is the true nature of gravity? That question led to a re-examination of accepted ideas across many disciplines, culminating in the formulations of the electric universe hypothesis. Thornhill has since written many papers for the U.S. journal Aeon and the SIS Review of the Society for Interdisciplinary Studies, the SIS in England, and served as a council member of SIS. I would like to welcome to the program Wallace Thornhill. Wallace, live from Australia. How are you today?
I'm fine, thanks, Jimmy.
You know, I want to insert the Australian joke right there. I'm just not going to do it. You know, Americans like to just crack the shrimp on the Barbie joke. I'm not going to do it. Just welcome. I'll say, Wallace, I didn't tell you this earlier today when we were talking. Great conversation, by the way. But we have a huge listenership in Australia. And when I say huge, I mean it's big, and they're tweeting right now. They're all excited, but oddly enough, the requests that came in for you over the last year didn't all come from Australia. It was a worldwide thing for you. And how does that make you feel? I told you earlier today. You know, you're rolling that massive rock uphill, but you've got a massive amount of worldwide support out of the UK, across Europe, Canada, the United States, Brazil, South America. You know, you've got a lot of support out there for this theory. I'm serious. How does that make you feel?
It's very encouraging. The main payoff for me is the actual adventure of discovery, but to see the globe light up when I have a look at the people that are visiting my website is very encouraging.
It's when you have it's one thing to have the support of your family and a few colleagues, but you know when you're as controversial as you are, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
when you do that, It's you're gaining one supporter at a time. They don't come in droves, do they? They just didn't back up this overnight.
No. Initially, that's true. I realised back in 1994 when I teamed up with Dave Talbot that it's not the sort of task you can undertake on your own, and you had to network, bring people in, and the fact that we're now bringing highly qualified people into the Thunderbolts group, which we call ourselves, is the most gratifying part of it of all, because it means that other scientists now are beginning to see which side of the bread is buttered.
I just said that earlier today in Twitter. Yeah, you're so right about that. No, I literally said what side your bread is buttered about this today on Twitter. Now, the movie, you just brought up Thunderbolt. The movie, which I saw a while ago, is amazing. That really, really, really helps explain the theory and the idea behind this. Just help me out really quick. What is the full title of the movie?
The first one we did was Thunderbolts of the Gods.
Thunderbolts of the Gods. Just real quick, I'm going to have my producers get that up on Twitter. Thunderbolt of the Gods. Please get the links up for that. Are the links on your website too as well?
Yes, they are. If you go to thunderbolts.info, that will give you the links to everything. And there's dozens and dozens of YouTube videos and articles and so on to be seen there.
Okay, and it's holoscience.com /WordPress, WP. And
That's
you can
right.
get there. And also at jimmychurchradio.com, just click on Wallace's name. It'll take you straight there. But that movie... I had said in the intro or during the opening of the show that you have a way of and I say this all the time. You have a way of explaining this in a very fundamental way for people that don't have a grasp on things. I say it on the show all the time, Wallace. Please talk to me like I'm 5 years old. And I remember I was watching a presentation you had done. I don't know where it was. Maybe you say it at every presentation, but you literally said, I'm going to explain this so a 5-year-old can understand it. I'm like, man, Wallace is my guy. Yeah, he's got me. He's got me right here.
I'm just following what Einstein said. You know, he said you should be able to explain it to the barmaid. Otherwise, you don't understand it. And I agree. You know, the problem today is that the language used is largely meaningless. And so people think, they must know more than I do. But that's not the case. If you don't understand it, you should ask the questions.
Yeah, when I see a physicist speak to a group of physicists and he's got his PowerPoint going in the background and those equations start mounting and they're just up there, I'm lost. You know, I tune out because I don't really understand it. And you could do the very same thing and you don't do it that way.
No, I mean, I've sat in those lectures and that amongst experts, and you can hear the nervous laughter when they say silly things, but that doesn't stop them, you know.
I'm laughing with you. You're so right. And also, it just harkens back to our conversation earlier today, and I'll try to keep that clean. Okay. What we're going to do tonight, and I say this to all of my guests, you're a guest in my home. We're sitting on my couch. We're just going to have a conversation between friends. We're going to start where we're going to start. We're going to end where we're going to end, and it's going to be great. And if I learn something, then our audience is participating in the same way. They're sitting there with us, and they're going to learn and discover right along with us. So are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, let's start backwards, if you don't mind. We have the standard. What we're going to present tonight, everybody, is we're going to present the electronic universe theory. It's called the EU. Now we have the standard theory, the accepted theory of orthodox academia out there on the beginning and the start of the universe. There are a few different versions of the standard theory about how, what, and when, but basically that it all started from nothing. We had a Big Bang. That's in its elementary for our discussion tonight. Big Bang started. The universe is expanding at a certain rate of speed, and here we are today. That's in its basics. what EU, well, we're going to explain to you what EU is and how it is a new theory on everything in our universe, from the center of everything all the way to our very atoms and our molecules and our bodies here on planet Earth, and how everything connects in between and what it all means, including our sun, the planets, the Milky Way, to the universe, to the multiverse, and then we're going to go backwards in the other direction. Make sense, Wallace?
I hope so.
Okay. Hey man, it's your party. I need you to pull me through this. So, but that's what we're going to do. And let's start backwards. Standard theory says Big Bang.
Yep.
Okay. You say, and let's start there.
I say that we have no idea how the universe began. We have no idea of its size, and we have no idea of its age.
And go ahead.
Words, in other words, it seems to be limitless in extent as far as we can see. We cannot say how it was formed because we have no idea how matter is created. We do not even understand how matter has mass, so our ignorance is profound. And what's more, as I'll try and point out during this show, we don't understand gravity either, and yet the Big Bang is a gravitational cosmology.
Now, before Velikovsky, before Worlds in Collision, were you a standard theory guy at that point?
I was starry-eyed, so to speak. I used to bore the kids at primary school with my drawings of eclipsing binaries and stuff like that. I used to read the encyclopedia. It wasn't until I read Velikovsky's book that the whole possibility that you could understand more about the heavens by delving right back into the earliest human memories seemed so obvious to me. And Velikovsky showed that you could do it in a forensic style. It's the same way that detectives work out what happened from a whole bunch of unreliable witnesses. And you can treat the ancient stories as being unreliable unless you look for the common features amongst them which stand out. And that's the kind of thing to go after. And that's what Velikovsky showed. That was his big lesson.
Yeah, and for me too. And I think what you're also going at is Velikovsky also said it was okay to think outside the box and cause you to ask questions. And I'm sure the first thing you did is you went to school and asked questions and then probably got laughed at, right?
Well, that's right. I found it was difficult to interest other kids in what I had to show them, which I found surprising. But then again, I suppose I was considered a bit of a nerd. But when I got to university, I felt that here's a place where you can ask any questions, and here's all the experts, and this will be great. And I found instead hostility, disinterest, and answers to questions that I hadn't asked. In other words, they avoided the questions.
Yeah, it's hostility, isn't it?
Hostility, yes.
Yeah, and college is supposed to be freedom of thought, right? Isn't that what it's about?
Right.
And
yes.
Research and learning and expanding and discovery. And
yes.
It hasn't changed today. You've been doing this now for 40 years. Yep. And it frightens me to just sit here and make a statement like, you know what, it's really not any different today than it was in 1972.
We're slow learners, and I think one of the things that Velikovsky pointed out in his last book called Mankind in Amnesia is that we are actually, the whole human race, damaged goods, because we lived through events which we considered to be the end of the world, doomsday. And the survivors were so stricken psychologically that we still bear the scars today, which shows in all of our insane behaviour, both towards each other and towards the planet. So I consider right now, after having gone through all of the science that was required to help explain the possibility that the solar system has a recent history, still the most important message is for mankind to understand itself. Otherwise, we've got no future.
There's a couple of points in your theory, and also my research and interviews that I've done with guests on lost civilizations, and of course what the ancients saw in the sky, and I'm totally into the astronomy and the astrology side of both astronomy and astrology, because of the way that they talked about and wrote about what they saw in the skies. And I still don't really get, I can't wrap my head around how they had so much information. That's another show without telescopes, if you know what I mean. But with Velikovsky and the research that you have done, one of the things I've been trying to just get to the bottom of is what were they actually seeing in the skies? I mean, what was actually up there? Was it crazy plasma formations? Was there no moon? Was there two suns? Was there no sun? I don't know, but what was it that they were seeing up there? Because today I get conflicting reports, but I don't have one solid, firm answer, which is what we do want.
Well, I think having a look at some of our videos, particularly the Thunderbolts of the Gods videos, Alien Skies and so on the website, you can see the full movies in many instances. So that gives you a visual picture of what they saw in the sky. But basically it was planets up close enough to be able to see details on their surface, particularly Mars, who was the god of war, was remarked upon as having a scar following a thunderbolt. Now, the thunderbolt motif became the common link between Dave Talbot's work, which was the sort of mytho-historical investigation, and we'd both arrived at the same point, me from the scientific and he from the mytho-historical forensic investigation, at the same point. And so the joining point was this thunderbolt of the gods. What was this thunderbolt of the gods that was so destructive and so feared by all ancient races around the world? And it was that showed me that the thunderbolt of the gods was actually a high-energy plasma discharge form. And you can see this in the sculptures of Zeus hurling his thunderbolt. It's not a jagged zigzag, Captain Marvel type lightning bolt. It's got a definite shape, a sort of corkscrew shape superimposed on a football. And this is the kind of thing that you see in the high-energy plasma labs, and they call it a plasmoid. And even the description of how it flew between these planets fits the physics of high-energy plasma. So here was the link between science and the stories of the ancients. And that gave us great confidence then when an expert in the field identified that there's even more of those formations for us. It gave us great confidence that our reconstruction, which sounded like science fiction, actually occurred.
And what about Venus and the moon? What were they seeing? Also, Uranus, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn. Were all of those completely out of position too as well?
Well, it boils down to this, that we are the aliens in this solar system. I mean, that sounds crazy, but with the electrical model of gravity shows that this is the normal event, that a bright star like the sun has the ability to capture other stars, passing stars, at great distances because the electrical influence of the sun extends out to the heliosphere, which is 100 times the distance of the Earth from the sun, so it's a long way out. And another star passing has a similar electrical sphere around it, so when those touch, the two see each other, so to speak, electrically. And when that happens, you begin to get electrical interactions which modify the forces between them such that capture occurs. Now, when you look dispassionately at the outer gas giants, they're a complete fruit salad. They've all got different characteristics, different axial tilts, rotation, and so on.
Right.
It makes sense that they were captured and that the minor planets and the moons and so on that we find in the solar system are some of their satellites which were torn off, if you like, in the process of capture. So the stories of the ancients regarded Saturn as our primeval sun, That was the original sun. All the old words for the sun, Sol and Helios and so on, referred to Saturn, not to our present sun.
Right.
And when you come to Australia, the Australian Aborigines have legends which talk about two suns being in the sky, a brighter and a lesser sun. And their description of their antics fit a plasma discharge explanation. So we have the science to back up these outrageous claims.
They sound outrageous at first until you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, which you do so well. But one of the things I'm a little confused about is how, and I need you to help me on this, please, is how the changes could be, these extraordinary changes happen in what would seem to be a very short amount of time, 10,000 years, 5,000 years, 3,000 years.
That's right.
So how can these extraordinary changes happen? You know, the switch of Saturn to our own sun,
yes.
And also the position of the planets and Mars moving back into its current orbit and so forth. All of this had to happen in a very short time span.
I explained this on my website, actually, for those who want to go into a tiny bit of high school mathematics. But basically, when you understand gravity for the first time, you realize that the electrical exchanges, these thunderbolts of the gods, are the means by which the planets reposition themselves after a capture event. And it's the thunderbolts of the gods which moved Mars away from us and away from Venus. Mars, Venus, Earth, and Saturn were the key players, apparently, in the settling of our system into this solar system. So one of the things that was the most difficult to do for me was to give up old certainties. And I find that, or have found over the years, that there have been a number of scholars who've tried to tread the same path, but they get to a certain point and peer over the precipice and say, nope, I'm not going any further. Well, I think I've had the courage to continue where the evidence led. And the result is an amazing picture of life in the universe, where it actually is most likely to be found. It has all sorts of implications for our past and our possibility of finding life in the universe. None of these things are presently even anywhere on the map of the space research that's going on.
Yeah, and with the standard theory, the standard model, you can only take things so far until you can't let the equations or the math continue. You're forced to stop because there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
With the electronic universe, with your theory, the answer is always there in front of you, and there's an explanation for not only the past, but what can happen in the future.
Yes, and we try to tie the science always to experiment and observation. There's none of this devising an equation which then all of the weird possibilities are then canvassed. We look at the peer-reviewed work that the high-energy plasma physicists do, and we look at the flood of information coming back from space probes and so on. And the thing that you need, if you're going to be confident in your theory, is to have confirmation of outrageous predictions that are made from your hypothesis. And I've had that happen time and again. The most spectacular one was with the Deep Impact mission, where they ploughed a copper projectile or put it in front of a comet so that it struck at extremely high speed. And I predicted there would be an electrical flash before the main impact, and also that the impact results would be much more violent and brilliant than expected. And that was shown to be true, particularly the initial flash. That was a total surprise for the people in the control room when that happened. But it was obvious to me that if the comet is an electrical body in the electrical field of the sun, then another object coming from a different part of the solar system, like this spacecraft had at high speed, there's no chance for it to adjust the voltage between them, so it has to be sudden and it has to take place just like walking across a carpet and then grabbing a doorknob and getting zapped. It was a similar kind of thing. So it was easy to predict, but it was not anywhere on any astronomer's mind at the time.
Well, even if it would have ground it out on something on the way there, the proof is exactly the same, isn't it?
Well, yeah,
you know what I mean.
I think the thing is, in space you don't have a ground.
You don't have a ground.
Yeah, so that there will always be voltage differences. In fact, they're beginning to find that now on the moon when they talk about dust moving around forming a kind of an atmosphere. Based on electrical differences between the surface of the moon and the space surrounding it.
Now, how soon before the impact did you make your prediction? A day, a week about the flash?
About 4 years earlier when they announced the experiment.
I just wanted you to say it out loud. Okay. and when you go back and look, which I did, I went back and checked out the footage. It's a blinding flash. It's a beautiful thing to see, and that was one thing. That was just one, but there was something else that I want you to touch upon that I find fascinating. The scars, not only on Mars, but I'm going to ask you about the Grand Canyon here on planet Earth.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's something there, and the craters on the moon.
Yes.
And the way that you explain this and demonstrate this, because I've often wondered, they're not holes. They're not. They're flat. As a matter of fact, if you look at it really close, they're concave. They're not. They protrude from. They are with
That's
the.
right.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
They're
a bubble.
Upwards is what they say. Yeah.
Yes. There's not an indentation there, and. The explanation, through all of our lives, meteors have been hitting the moon for, hundreds of millions of years. Yep. Okay, that explains the amount of craters that are there. Okay, and as a child, you grasp that, and that's what you grow up with. But the one thing that when you look at that, we know, you take a marble, you throw it in the dirt, it makes a shape. And that's not what is happening on the moon. Explain it to us the best that you can. It's fascinating.
Okay. The best evidence that it's not all due to impacts, I mean, there are some impacts, but very few, is that these craters are beautifully circular, mostly. They have steep walls, flat melted floors, and often they are superimposed one on top of another, and there's very little damage to the one that gets the first crater by the second. There are often central peaks. Now, all of these features were replicated in the 1960s in an experiment done in a plasma oven, and the chap who did it, Brian Ford, an Englishman, reported on it in the British Interplanetary Society's magazine, I think it was, and but nobody took any notice. But it was a challenge, a direct challenge to the idea that the craters on celestial bodies are due to impacts. The kind of scarring has all of the features you would expect from electrical discharges between the moon and another planet or another large body. And of course, this is what the ancients were describing with the thunderbolts of the gods.
Explain a little bit how the plasma is directed down and forming the actual shape of the crater, and why it isn't indented and why it is in the other direction.
Yep. When a lightning bolt strikes a surface, it always strikes it at right angles. It comes down vertically. Doesn't matter where the lightning bolt originates in the sky, it'll always hit the ground vertically. And it's the same with the cosmic thunderbolt. It will strike the ground vertically. So you don't find craters on the walls of craters. In other words, something coming in at a shallow angle and impinging on the wall of a crater. So that's evidence in favor of the electrical model. The other thing is that electric currents in space come in the form of Birkeland currents, which is like a twisting, almost a drill bit, if you like, or more like a router bit, because you have generally twin filaments rotating, and when they strike the surface, they gouge the surface, but they leave the center quite often untouched. and that's why you get these central peaks. And also you can have rings of discharge, in other words, one inside the other, so that you get these multiple rings. The very big craters on the moon and other bodies often tend to have multiple rings, and that's characteristic of a huge interplanetary thunderbolt.
Yeah, almost terraced, stair steps.
And you get terraces, and also you get corkscrew craters.
Yeah, corkscrew.
You form a corkscrew crater with an impact.
And, you know, for me, when I look, after I originally heard your explanation of this a while ago, and I go back and I'm looking at photographs of the moon now, and I'm just fascinated because I didn't look at it with that mindset before. Now all I see is one big lie. That's what I see. I just see one big lie, because you look at each crater and you just realize that it's not shaped round. Round. I'm trying to think of another word, but it doesn't dip in, and which makes sense. No, not at all. And when you look at the really, really, really large craters on the moon, there's some really big ones. Yes. Wouldn't that have blasted the moon in half? You know, or destroyed the moon, or cracked it, or done something instead? You just have a perfectly shaped ring with a domed shaped center.
Yeah.
Am I making sense in that description? Shouldn't the moon have been destroyed about 100 times over?
Well, maybe not the moon. It's quite a large body, but you would expect more splatter and just a shambles on the surface. But that's not what you see. It's beautifully machined, and I think the astronauts who circled the moon remarked on how recent everything looked. But there are some moons in the solar system that have got craters that are bigger than the radius of the moon, which means that it's almost impossible that they could have survived such an impact.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Yeah. And there are evidence when you look at the moon and you see something that is a crater formed from an object, then you see the splatter. You see the discharge of the dirt from from the lunar surface spreading out like sun rays.
You get a kind of a butterfly effect.
Yeah, you do see that, and of course it is there. But for the majority of those on the moon, it looked like it was bombarded by lightning for millennia. I have no idea how.
Well,
long.
Actually, it can happen quite quickly. You can make a mess on one hemisphere of a planet and leave the other one untouched. And this we see on several moons, and even Mars. Mars has one hemisphere which is quite different to the other. But this can happen in one encounter between two planets. It takes place over a period of hours, but the devastation can be phenomenal.
Now, what about let's talk about our own Earth for just 1 second. What about something as large as the Grand Canyon, which of course Orthodox archaeology and geologists are going to tell you that it was formed by the Snake River and the river that goes through there over. Is that an electronic effect?
Yes, obviously. When you look at it from space, it looks just like an arc scar on a piece of metal. And also, it's a very small version of that huge scar across the face of Mars. All of the characteristics of the Grand Canyon match that of an electrical scar. It doesn't match any idea of a river flowing at high altitude, mind you, across that plateau and carving that deep gouge and very wide gouge. And if you look over the edge of the rim, down those steep walls, going down about a mile or so in places, there's very little rubble at the bottom. And you've got to ask yourself, where was all the water that washed all this debris away, and where is the debris?
Where did it go? It has to go somewhere.
That's right.
Have you talked to any geologists about this and got them to come aboard?
We had a meeting in Laughlin, Nevada, quite a few years ago now, about 5 years ago I think it was, where we had a professor of geology, and he didn't want to know. So I spent the time after the event taking a busload of people who'd been at our conference to the Grand Canyon. I'd never visited it, but I was telling them how it was formed. And it was hilarious because when we got to the visitor center, I went through the theory again and showed them all of the characteristics of an electrical scar. And then later, when we were out on the rim, I could hear these voices in the distance saying, "Did you know this was a lightning scar?" Wow.
What about, Robert Schoch is open-minded. Have you talked to him?
Oh, sure. I know him quite well.
And
he has actually spoken at some of our conferences. So we're open to each other's research.
I have Robert Schoch on the line right now. No, I'm just kidding. Had I known that, I would have called him and brought him on. For some reason, I think he might be in Egypt with John Anthony West.
That sounds right.
Yeah. John is out of country, and he'll be back in March. But Robert is the kind of guy that would allow himself to understand what you're trying to say. He may not agree, but at least he's not going to close the door on you.
Yep. No, that's the kind of people we like to have at our conferences. We don't have to all agree because we're all still learning. I'm still learning more about gravity, which is I never thought that would happen, but it's true. So.
Well, let's get to gravity in just a second. I want to get back to Velikovsky.
Sure.
Because we're going to spend a lot of time on gravity. Just like I told you earlier today, I've had 50 physicists on the show. I've had 50 different answers about gravity, and I'm not kidding. I'm hoping one day that somebody just blows my mind, and I go, "Oh, I get it now." But if those guys can't agree. Then here we are. We know nothing.
The field's wide open.
Yeah, it's completely. So back to Velikovsky. One of the things about Velikovsky, he had a meteoric rise in fringe science, and I have no idea how many millions of books were sold. And he was on top of the world with a lot of followers for decades.
Yes.
And I've seen him describe that was his book, Worlds in Collision, and how Mars achieved its orbit and Venus and the bumping off and the moon and those collisions, and how Mars achieved its new orbit where it is now today, and how Venus is where it is today. But that is in direct conflict and contrast with the electronic universe theory, in that in your theory, the worlds are electronically repelled and couldn't, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they couldn't actually collide, could they?
That's right.
So now it was Velikovsky that got you into this. How did you get over that hurdle with him?
Well, he admitted that he didn't know either, but he did give some ideas in his book that it was due to electromagnetism. And when I visited him, he gave me a copy of a small monograph that he'd written back in the early 1940s, I think it was, called Cosmos Without Gravitation, in which he looked at the possibility of gravity being some form of dipolar electric force. Now, it's important the distinction is made between a dipolar electric force and the one due to a naked electric charge, like a proton or an electron.
Sure.
The dipolar force can come from neutral matter, and this is the key because, we live on an electrically neutral Earth, insofar as the matter that we're made from and, the chair we're sitting on and so on is electrically neutral. If it wasn't, we'd certainly know about it. So you've got to say, well, where does this electric force come from? It comes from the fact that all of the atoms in our bodies are made from equal numbers of positive and negative charges. But they can't occupy the same space. So in each tiny atom, the positive charge is offset from the negative charge, and that means it's an electric dipole. So he was on the right track, but he said he didn't want to publicize that monograph because it still needed work. But it gave me the clue because then 2 years later, that was in 1979, I visited Velikovsky. It was only 6 months before he died. in 1981, there was a small advertisement in the Scientific American, I think it was in December, and it was titled The Journal of Classical Physics. And that caught my eye immediately because classical physics is the point of departure of the electric universe from modern physics, so-called. And the first article that was advertised was called Electron Structure. Now, according to particle physicists, electrons don't have structure. So I sent off for a copy, and I subsequently corresponded with the author and sent him a copy of some of my work, and we met up in London, of all places. And we've been in touch over the years ever since. But his model, simple model, involved little electric dipoles inside the particles that make up the atom. So it's like wheels within wheels, if you like. And it's a very simple model, and it explains magnetism and gravity in terms of this simple dipolar electric force. So armed with that, we then had the possibility of trying to understand the physics behind what Velikovsky had proposed in his book. Of course, when he did propose these ideas that the planets had moved closely and on different orbits within the memory of mankind, he was howled down because it disobeyed Newton's law. But no one understands Newton's law. Newton didn't. He admitted that. He just said, here's an equation and it works. And this is largely what mathematics is about in physics. You can have an equation which describes things, but it doesn't explain a darn thing. It's the same with Einstein's theories, I'm afraid. They explain things so that it appears as though he's been vindicated by various experiments, but no other thought is given to alternatives. The fact that it describes what happens doesn't mean that it explains anything.
Go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
Well, that was the biggest hurdle, because when I came across that idea that I had to discard Einstein's theories, I thought, hell, no one's going to listen to me at all now. But I found that there are hundreds of scientists around the world who've come to the same conclusion. And all of those people who've struggled and read books about special relativity and that, and then come away saying, oh, I think I understand, still scratching their head. The reason they're still scratching their head is that it doesn't make sense. But to admit that, it means that you get howled down mostly by, the debunkers and so on.
Sure.
Who are, the kind of shock troops of modern science.
It comes down to money. It always comes down to money, and if you're going to start stepping outside of Einstein's box and disagreeing with that and going way outside, then you're not going to have a job. And
science today operates on the Hollywood celebrity model, unfortunately.
It certainly does.
And that's not the way to do science.
No, it certainly does. And now that we've kind of painted this picture on the front half in our own solar system, now let's reach back and talk about the conflicts with the Standard Model and the Big Bang. So let's go back to that, where the Standard Model says we came from nothing. It started, everything shrank. We're in a cycle, right? It expanded and then contracted back to nothing, to a little tiny, until it couldn't go smaller anymore, and it was so small that you couldn't see it, and then boom, it reversed direction again, and we had another Big Bang, and here we are today. So let's go back to that point. What's the problem with the Big Bang?
The problem is that it's a purely mathematical exercise. And in mathematics, when you have infinities involved, like infinite concentration of mass or infinite speed, all this kind of thing, then you're no longer doing physics, because infinity is meaningless in physics. You can have very big numbers, but you can't talk about infinity, because immediately, as Douglas Adams humorously said, you can prove black is white and white is black and go out and get killed on a pedestrian crossing. So you have to be very careful of the mathematics. And one of our group, Steve Crothers, has shown that even the mathematics of general relativity is fundamentally flawed. So you have to distinguish between science and mathematics. And one of the leading scientists in England some years ago pointed out that the ability to do mathematics is rather akin to the ability to play three-dimensional chess or something like that. You know all the moves, and the mathematician will say at the end of all of these moves, you can be sure that the answer is correct. But the problem is you don't know what those symbols mean that they've used in the process. So the mathematics can be impeccable, but what it means can be completely inscrutable. Now, with the Big Bang, it got its origin from a Belgian priest, Roman Catholic priest, Abbé Lemaitre, Georges Lemaitre, and he was trying to reconcile, of course, the biblical story, the Genesis story, with science, and he came up with the idea of a kind of cosmic egg where everything sprang from this beginning. And one of the reasons that gained currency was that at the same time it had been discovered that faint objects in the sky appeared to have high redshifts. The redshift is like the sound of a siren going past, only in this case you're talking about light. And on approach, the frequency is high. In other words, it's blue, the blue end of the spectrum, and as it moves past you, it drops in frequency, the pitch drops, and in the case of light, that means it shifts towards the red, so it's called redshift. This redshift was simply interpreted as being this Doppler shift, but Hubble himself said this is the most unlikely answer. The obvious other possibility is that there's something about these faint objects that affects the energy of the light that they're generating. And there is an astronomer, quite a well-known one. He published the Atlas of Peculiar Galaxies. His name is Halton Arp, and I recommend anyone to look him up and find out about him. He's been dubbed by those in the know as the modern Galileo because he showed observationally that the redshift is a measure of the youthfulness of an object, not the speed with which it's travelling away. There is some Doppler shift, but it's minor compared with this intrinsic redshift, as it's called. So the whole basis for the idea that the universe is expanding was built on this idea that faint objects are racing away from us at high speed. Therefore, they must have, if you work backwards in time, you could figure out they must have all started at a single point. Once again, a single point is a mathematical concept that has nothing to do with physics. So, Halton Arp has shown, and he said, that the universe appears to be smaller than we think, the visible universe, that is. It's of unknown extent and of unknown age, an unknown origin. So this is the stance that we take in the electric universe. We follow Halton Arp's excellent observational work and say this is the most sensible thing to say at this stage of our understanding. Of course, when you have the Big Bang, that didn't work anyway initially, so they had to introduce all sorts of ridiculous things like inflation period,
right,
and so on. And they talk about the cosmic microwave background radiation as being proof of the Big Bang. It's nothing of the sort. They've recently discovered, and we've been saying it for decades, that microwave radiation is foreground radiation from the electric currents that are flowing between stars and galaxies. So the whole structure is, the physics and the astronomy of the 20th century is going to be a joke in future.
Why is it that the physicists and the string theory guys and all the theoretical guys and astrology, why do they ignore electricity when electricity is such an easy thing to understand and is it too fundamental? Why?
I think the problem for them is it's too difficult. Because the plasma scientists have shown that plasma behaves almost like a living thing.
Right.
And when they run supercomputer simulations, they can't use equations. They have to simulate by having charged particles set up in a supercomputer's memory. And then they just press the start button, and after hours and hours or days or weeks of calculation, it comes and shows what it's found. And then they can go and test that against what they see in the laboratory. This is the way science should be done. And this is the only way they can work. They have to check things against experiment because it's so complex. Hans Alfvén, the Nobel Prize winner in plasma physics, said that the guys who are doing fusion research at present and so on, they should actually be more aware of the problems that are involved if they just use pure theoretical approaches. And the astronomers are even further removed. They just ignore it and treat it as a fluid, as a gas. It's not a gas. It's made up of charged particles, which are very powerfully affected by magnetic fields. And that's the other thing. And this is one of the most incredible oversights.
Well, okay. Well, I wanted to jump in. We haven't seen these plasma fields and the connections out there with different galaxies until recently. And
that's right.
Yeah, and when we look at those color photographs today, showing the different colors and the connections of the galaxies look totally different to us now, because you can see the connection to the other stars and the other planets and how they are electronically connected. But we quite simply didn't see that, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? This is all new stuff.
That's right. It's the radio telescopes that pick up the signals from the power lines, if you like, between galaxies and stars. And that's why radio astronomy is so important. It's ironic that when it was first begun, it was regarded as being a waste of time. But it will be the way of charting the connection of our own sun to the galaxy in future. What I was going to say before about magnetism, and this is the most amazing oversight of all, is that you only get magnetic fields from the movement of charged particles, in other words, an electric current. And everywhere we look in space, we see magnetic fields. And yet it's considered that somehow or another, and that's usually the word somehow is the major operative word, these magnetic fields are both generated and sustained forever, as if they're in superconductors. But that's not the case. The fact they're radiating energy and the radio telescopes can pick them up means they must be getting power from somewhere. They have to be plugged into a power source. So all of this is, it's the bleeding obvious, as they say.
Yeah, you know what you're sounding like right now, and I hope you take this the right way. You sound like a modern-day Tesla.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for Tesla. I think he was an intuitive genius.
Did you do a lot of, I don't want to get too sideways here, but did you do a lot of for what you can find out about Tesla, did you do a lot of research into his stuff?
No, not a great deal, because it's very hard to find hard and fast information. Most of my work has been involved at looking at what scientists were doing and understanding the assumptions they were making, and this is something that most people haven't got the information to do. You know, I watch these science programs and despair, because almost every sentence there are assumptions that hidden within assumptions that make the statement absolute nonsense.
The one thing I'll say about Tesla and listening to you, he was all about, dude, electricity's everywhere.
Yes, that's right. Yes,
it's everywhere. It's free. There it is. Just go out and get it.
That's right. He also thought the Big Bang was nonsense.
Yes, he did. That's right. So, like I said, you sound like a modern-day Tesla. Isn't it a shame that he was taken out of the play intentionally, again, for money, all about the money, right? Taken out of the play because of money, and now we're left with, we have Tesla, the myth, the legend, the legendary. You know, we don't know really what the truth is, and we may never find out, and that is just sad. Just sad.
Yes.
Money.
Yes, it shows that science doesn't work the way they advertise.
No, not at all. Not at all. Now, okay, so back to the Big Bang. With the way that the universe is expanding now, and if you go with the standard model, it would only make sense for the standard model that if we could point at every galaxy, and with the direction that they are traveling now as we are expanding, that we could draw a line straight back and everything would go to one singular point. Is that possible? Do they have that in their corner, is what I'm getting at. Do they at least have that?
Well, it sort of flies in the face of the idea that Einstein relied on, and that is that you can't distinguish one point in space from another. So the argument is it's like blowing up a balloon. So all of the points are started from somewhere, but not in the same space that they occupy now. In other words, if you let the air out of a balloon with a whole lot of dots painted on it, then of course they're not heading only towards each other on the surface of the balloon, but they're also heading towards a point which is displaced in, wherever the balloon finally collapses to. But this is the kind of mathematical trickery you get into, where you switch from one dimension to another dimension, perform certain calculations in that dimension, and then try and project it back into our 3 dimensions, and you come up with the most outrageous nonsense.
I asked you this earlier today, and I told you not to answer. I wanted to hold this off for the show tonight. Mm-hmm. But Wallace Thornhill travels with Lawrence Krauss. You guys are holding hands, and you go to the very edge of everything. The very edge. You guys go out, you somehow get there, and you get to the edge, and you poke your head out with Lawrence to the other side. What do you see?
Well, Lawrence would probably give you an answer, but the real answer is that the universe is defined as everything there is. So there is no edge, there is no outside. Now, this is a bit hard to wrap your mind around, but that's the definition. So to go to the edge of the universe is a meaningless concept.
So, okay. So I'll change the question just a little bit, and that's a great answer. That's my answer. Well, that's half of my answer. So you and Lawrence stick your head out, and you go to Lawrence's edge of the universe, okay?
Yes.
And you stick your head out. What do you show Lawrence? That's the question.
I know, yeah. I show him that there's no such thing as multiverses because, as I said, the definition of the universe is everything there is. So if there were to, say, exist alternative universes, they're part of the universe. So the whole idea is nonsensical. It's illogical.
I think you get to the edge and you stick your head out, right, what is supposed to be the edge, and you stick your head out and you take a peek, and then you just see a lot more of the same coming at you from above, below, behind, to the side, and it just continues on forever. There isn't everything is one and the same. There isn't an edge. It is just there.
In other words, that's right. In other words, there is no edge. But I suppose if you followed Einstein, you'd see the back of your head.
Yeah, right. Well, look, and I know you probably had the same thought as a child. This was me growing up thinking about the edge of the universe. And either you had the same thought or you're just going to laugh. But what I thought at the age of 5 or 6, you get to the edge of everything, and it's a brick wall. It's literally a masonry brick wall. That's what I used to picture in my mind.
Yes.
Because there couldn't be blackness. There couldn't be a continuation on the other side. That's what we were taught. Right. And so I had to somehow get over that. And now I realize I know in my heart of hearts that the Big Bang, you can throw that out. It's just too preposterous. It's too crazy, and it's also too perfect of an answer. And that it just continues. It just is, and it continues from the other side back towards us. If you could go as far out as you could, and then turn around and head back, it wouldn't look any different to you. It would all be the same. There wouldn't be any difference. Yeah. Maybe some gaps. You might have some gapage, but it all is.
There certainly are gaps between galaxies and so on, which are a bit of a puzzle for the standard model, which, as I said, requires that the universe be homogeneous.
Right.
But the electrical model shows why that is, because the electrical model shows these currents between galaxies, and that scavenge matter far more effectively than gravity ever could, and over longer distances. So it's the electrical nature of the universe which clears out these voids and concentrates the matter into the wonderful galaxies we see.
Why don't we let's take a couple-minute break, go get a fresh glass of water, do what you got to do. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask Wallace what the heck gravity is, and then he's going to tell us how fast it is. We'll be back right after this. More with Wallace Thornhill, live from Australia on Fade to Black. Stay with us.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal God on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? My name's Brian Taylor, Ninja Badass Extraordinaire, and this is JimmyChurchRadio.com.
JJCR, in your face.
JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. I picked the wrong break. This is Fade to Black. Follow us right now on Twitter at JChurchRadio. What you want to do is hashtag F2B. Become a Fade or not. Come hang out in the sandbox. Tons of questions lined up already. If you do have questions for Wallace or myself, for Wallace, hashtag F2BQ. That's Fade to Black questions. And what we're talking about tonight is the electronic universe, the electric universe. I had said electronic earlier. The electric universe and how everything fundamentally is connected. The very cells in your body, the formation of atoms, all the way back through the universe, all the planets, the suns, plasma. I'm reaching out here. Meteors, meteorites, comets. Everything is connected and caused by the electric universe. And it is one of those things that if you are going to present this, go against Einstein, go against the speed of light, go against physics, go against string theory and all of the mainstream theorists that are out there lecturing around the world. If you choose to do this, you are you're cracking a big nut, and it's going to be a lifelong. And for Wallace, it has been 40 years. I've been following him for a long time, and I know that his ideas are more and more accepted, and he's got a lot of dedication out there, but it hasn't rewritten the history books yet. And to me, the more that I learn about it, the more that, you peel back the layer of those onions. Every time that I peel back that layer with the electric universe, it makes more and more sense to even somebody like me. And if I get it, I know that you get it. And again, I'm just saying, we're presenting the evidence tonight. I want you to research. Go to his website, holoscience.com. The links are on Jimmy Church Radio. Go check it out. Watch the videos. Read the evidence, and learn and draw your own conclusions. I'm not saying these are all the answers, and I know that Wallace isn't either, but you should go and discover and research yourself and try to get to the bottom of this, and then start sending emails to Lawrence Krauss. Hi, are you still with us, Wallace?
Yes, I am.
Did you hear my diatribe?
Yes.
Am I right? Am I right, sir?
Yes. We are always looking for new answers, and I'm prepared to drop things that I've believed in the past. That's been the hallmark of this work.
Have you gotten? I don't know if you have. I don't know if you'd even tell me, but have you gotten a phone call from Lawrence Krauss or any other mainstream academic out there to tell you that? We agree with you. We do, but we just can't say it in public. But you're on the right track.
Yes, that does happen. Not the show ponies, but the ones who are doing the hard work.
What do you do? How do you keep from breaking a television set, or maybe, standing up at a conference and yelling yelling out, the English are coming, and the British are coming. How do you stop that when you listen to? Well, I keep picking on Lawrence Krauss, but he gets under my skin.
Yes, I understand that.
How do you refrain, and how do you keep your cool?
Well, I go to the meetings of these people, when I say closed meetings, the ones amongst the peers, to see what they're up to. And I realise that the language that I would need to use, although it's simple, would make no difference to them. It wouldn't register. In other words, it's so far removed from the paradigm that they now believe in, and it is belief rather than actual proof of a hypothesis, then, I'd be wasting my time and my breath challenging them. And also the immediate fallback is, of course, that they're authorities. And who am I? Well, the thing is that all big breakthroughs come from individuals, and often in the past, those individuals have come from way off left field. The big names in science back in the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s often started out as something quite different, but were keen to understand something on their own, and in doing so, they brought in a fresh approach. And it's this fresh approach that's needed. But it's not the sort of thing that kids are taught in school these days. It's just a case of learn all these so-called facts and regurgitate them at the end, and we'll give you a degree or a diploma or something. But that's not what's needed. What's needed is alternatives being presented and asking kids to make their own decisions, and also teach them critical thinking. You see very little critical thinking when you look at all of these blogs and so on, and the responses you get. I mean, they're completely off the beam, most of the responses. I'm pleased to say they're much more on the beam on my website, but...
Yeah. Well, also, you guys over in Australia, somewhat over in Europe, I will, and Canada too, not so much here in the United States, but over in Australia, you have a great television show. You and I were talking about it earlier today. I'm a huge fan of Q&A. And yes, for our audience out there, well, everybody in Australia knows of the show, but for the audience that is stateside, and you haven't heard of Q&A, question and answer, if you haven't heard of that show, go and just pick one out. It doesn't matter. They're all good, and they're always very interesting and very cutting edge. And there's no way a show like that would ever make it here in the United States, and I know you understand why. Now,
yeah,
but
I think it's an Australian trait, actually. We're all descended from convicts, you see, so we have a great disdain for authority.
Okay, I didn't want to go there. You just did. Okay, so, but would you, if invited, because they are crazy like this on that show, would you go on that show with Krauss or Dawkins and sit down and have a Q&A? And with the audience and go toe-to-toe?
If I was invited. I mean, I've had to do something similar in the past, and I found that all I had to do was to point out all of the unfounded assumptions that were made in the statements, the bald statements of so-called fact, to make my point. I didn't have to do much more than that. And the audience got it. When these assumptions are pointed out, it becomes bleeding obvious that what's being said doesn't make any sense.
Well, and also all of those guys, the show ponies, as you called them, and I like that, by the way. I'm going to use that from now on in this show. Those show ponies, the debates that they have and the conferences that they have are all with like-minded individuals.
Yes.
They don't have anybody up there to question or go against the grain. And so the audience is constantly rah, 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 and fired up. But there isn't any oohs or there's none of that coming from them. And why is it? Are they afraid? Or is it just that they don't want to even waste their time with considering something else? What is it?
I think it's ironic that science was supposed to help us break away from the belief system of religions. But the funny thing is that all they've done is to construct a story and set up their own priesthood and their followers, and the followers are as adamant as any religious sect. So you have, and if you're going to change their mind, you have the same kind of problem as you would trying to convert somebody from believing one religion to another. This is the fundamental human problem in science. And unless you're presented with alternatives when you're young and impressionable, you're never going to know that these alternatives exist. So you just go along and join in with the crowd. It's a crowd effect. It's the bandwagon effect. And it's very powerful in modern science, unfortunately. But if you go back to the Renaissance, where you had individuals who were looked after by people with money and were allowed to pursue their own interests, that was when the big breakthroughs were made. We need another Renaissance, and I'm pleased to say that the Thunderbolts group operates on that principle.
Are you guys going to be we're going to go, I've got like 20 questions lined up right here that we're going to go through with very short answers, and I want to rapid fire these. These are from our audience. Is the Thunderbolt going to be in L.A. anytime soon? Can I come hang out? Are you guys going to do anything stateside?
I'll pass that on to our organizers, but the next one is in June in Phoenix.
Close enough. Close enough, my friend. That's an 8-hour drive. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's bang these out. Short answers. This is fun stuff. Here we go. And half of these I'm sure you're going to expect. This is from Beverly. She says, how does Wallace feel about God creating Earth? Do you believe?
When it comes to creating things, I'm as in the dark as anyone. But as for God, you have to remember that all the references to gods around the world referred to the planets. And therefore, you can actually begin to understand the origins of religions. From that point of view, you do have the possibility for science being able to break away from the religious storytelling, something it's never been able to do before.
Right, right. Were you religious were you ever religious? Or are you religious now, I should say?
We Australians tend not to be, and I was brought up in a heathen family, so I've remained that way. But once again, I was very curious, and my parents allowed me to go to religious meetings to find out what it was about, but that was all they did. They just said, yeah, sure, you go along and find out, but that's what I did.
Well, see, you're one of the good guys, so, when you get to the other side and you find out that you were wrong, they're going to go, okay, come on in, Wallace, you're actually one of the good guys. You get it. You weren't a bad guy. But what are you going to say? It's so funny. I'm so on the fence with my religion, because I was raised one way and I swung the other way, and then I kind of came back to the center. And it's the greatest mystery of all, isn't it? We just don't know. We don't know. Yeah. We don't know.
I think the electric universe actually has a spiritual aspect to it, because we then understand that we are connected to a universe that appears intelligent.
Well, that's exactly what I would hit Krauss and Dawkins with, right there. Mm-hmm. And it frustrates me so much that they're not even open to the suggestion that, the astronomical friggin' odds. The odds. I have no idea how many digits, Wallace, we're talking about, but it's got to be 1,000 digits long, the odds of our DNA being what it is today, that I am able to speak to you right now. For that miracle to happen, I'm not saying it was divine intervention, but I'm saying you better be open to it, because the odds of that happening, and I'm not saying God necessarily, I'm just saying somebody out there was a lot smarter than we are a long time ago and could quite easily have just meant this all to be and had fun. And maybe it was all science to them. I don't know, but I'm open to it, and you can't be closed because we don't have the answers. We don't.
No, I think the fundamental error that Dawkins and people like that make is that they assume the Earth is a closed system, has no reference to any information from anywhere else other than on the surface of the Earth. And the electric universe says that's not correct. We have all of the information in the universe available to us. So if life has formed somewhere else in the universe, that information is available on the Earth. So it can appear almost miraculously under new conditions. And this is what the fossil record shows. You get sudden wipeouts followed by a completely new species, and there's no gradation from one to the other. Now, this makes sense only if the universe already knows how to switch from building huge dinosaurs to, modern mammals, because it's encountered this environment somewhere else.
Does the polarity, this comes from Gene, he says, does the polarity of the universe reverse every so often?
No, but what does happen is that galaxies themselves age, and as they age, their voltage changes sufficiently that all of the atoms within it do a switch. They do a change in frequency. This is what that redshift is about.
Right.
And when that happens, I'm not sure what the result is, but it'll certainly be interesting to see.
Is the tetraploid the largest number possible?
The tetraploid, I'm not sure. But,
it's a question from Mark. Mark, I'm just being nice to my guest, or not nice to my listeners. This is from Feigned Indifference. Are the frequencies on the electromagnetic spectrum, are there any frequencies on the electromagnetic spectrum that we are not aware of yet?
I think that the question should be, is there a different way of signaling from transverse electromagnetic waves? And the answer is yes. And any advanced civilization would not use light or electromagnetic waves to communicate. That's why the SETI project will not find will not find anything.
But isn't the spectrum almost infinite? Because once you hit, can't you constantly split each frequency? Sure. Isn't that right?
Oh, the thing is that it extends, from DC, as they call it, up through the very low frequencies, up through sound, light, up to gamma rays and X-rays and so on. So,
and you can slice each one of those frequencies in half once again, in half and half and half and half and half.
Oh, sure. It's a continuum.
Yeah, it's a continuum. Okay, let's see. Les says, Jimmy, I'm so digging this. Okay, thank you, Les, for that. Dan says, what does Wallace think of Göbekli Tepe? Ooh.
That's very interesting because some of the carvings there appear to refer to the plasma environment that the prehistoric people...
Oh, you're talking about the cartwheel, the wheels?
Yes.
I didn't even think about that, young man.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I didn't think about that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of them there.
Yep. It's a more confirmation of our model of the history of the solar system.
Oh, man, my head just exploded. Yeah, I didn't think about that. And what Wallace is referring to, and I'm sure you have examples of this on your website, but the view from Earth looking out into the heavens, the plasma and the what's the best way to explain it? The shape of it, I guess. The geometry of it. Yeah, the geometry of it looks like a sunburst, but is represented over and over again through different cultures around the world, like a wagon wheel, rays coming off of a central point at the center of a circle. And then it's all over the place, all the way up to some of the crosses in Christianity actually have that too as well. But you're right. They have those at Göbekli Tepe. So then, Wallace, when we talk about ancient man and ancient history, what they were, and lost civilizations and ancient civilizations when they were looking to the heavens and seeing this, now we're talking about a representation of this 7,000 years before even the earliest carvings that you've been talking about. Because Göbekli Tepe is dated now to 10,000, 12,000, 14,000 BC.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you?
That's about the right order of magnitude. You have to remember that Velikovsky's reconstruction brought some of these events down into historical times, which is just not tenable. They all occurred around the end of the last ice age, or some of the major final ones. So you're talking around 10, 12,000 or more years ago.
And what what do you tell your skeptics when you find something like Göbekli Tepe? And again, another representation of the heavens like that you have found in many other cultures around the world, not just in Samaria or Mesopotamia or Egypt or even Mayan, but they're all over the world, even Indian, even here in North America.
That's right.
With
The Australian Aborigines have...
Aborigines in Australia. So, and now Göbekli Tepe comes up. What do you say? What do you want, guys? What more do you need?
That's right.
Here you go. Here's more evidence of it. Again, I don't know what more you can do or say to get them to swing around. Let's get back to some more questions. Let's see. What are Wallace's thoughts on ether suggested by Tesla? Oh, I actually heard you speak about this.
Yes, Tesla was correct. You cannot transfer an electromagnetic signal through nothing. It must have a medium. You can't wave nothing. And an electromagnetic wave requires that you have matter, which is in the form of little dipoles, as I mentioned earlier, to be able to transfer an electric field through a perfect vacuum. So, in effect, there's no such thing as a perfect vacuum. Now, Einstein postulated the ether away, and then it was supposed to have been proven that there was no ether with the Michelson-Morley experiment. But subsequent experiments by Dayton Miller and also the Michelson-Morley experiment itself had a residual. What no one took account of was that if this matter, which is required to transmit light through so-called empty space, exists, then it must have some mass and it must accumulate like an atmosphere around large bodies like the Earth and the Sun. And this is what Dayton Miller found. In fact, he showed the direction in which this ether drift pointed or was coming from. So the ether has to be reinstated for us to get any sense back into science. There's a whole lot of mistakes that were made around the time of the Great War. It's almost like mankind wanted to escape reality, and he did so in the arts and he did so in science. And we have to try and get back to sanity, which means a return to classical physics, the physics at the beginning of the 20th century.
Does the electric universe theory, this is from Easy Rider, does the electric universe theory correlate or correspond with zero-point field theory?
No, the zero-point field theory is all about misconceptions about what energy is. Energy requires the presence of matter. Now, if we have this ether pervading everything, everywhere, then it has a certain amount of energy and a very small amount of mass, which is not accounted for in any cosmological theory at present. The zero-point energy is this idea that you can suddenly have particles winking in and out of existence.
Right.
You cannot have particles created or annihilated. That's one of the principles of physics, which was dropped in modern physics when they lost sight of reality. So what happens, what my suggestion is that the ether particles, which I've said are the neutrinos, are actually the most collapsed form of matter known. Now, we know that neutrinos exist and they have a tiny, tiny mass, but they must contain all of the particles required to make a particle and its so-called antiparticle when a blast of energy strikes it. And that makes a whole lot of sense, because when the particles so-called annihilate, then they leave behind a neutrino. So what happens is that the particles that made up the positron and the electron collapse into a neutrino. They emit almost all of the energy of those two particles, pardon me, except for what's left inside the neutrino. So zero-point energy is one of these things that it's a concatenation of words that are meaningless. We have a lot of that in modern physics, and particularly in quantum physics, where things are described as being weird or spooky.
Right, right. Well, that is a very trending topic in our circles. Zero-point energy, and does the government or is there are corporations actually possess this knowledge and aren't sharing it with us? Well, it crosses a lot of different lines. Ufology, of course. and different brilliant scientists out there that have gotten close or gotten to but they've been bought out, suppressed, killed, whatever. And it's a good conversation because and for those 0 point proponents out there, until we run out of oil and the money is in oil, then you have the conspiracy to back this up.
Yeah,
and
the answer to energy is simple once you understand the structure of matter, and at present particle physics is a complete mess. And I've had particle physicists tell me that because it's a purely mathematical piece of gamesmanship. But if you use this simple model of particles within particles and all of them composed of orbiting systems of charge, all of these mysteries evaporate, and you could begin to see how energy can be released from nuclei by resonant means, the same way you do in chemistry, where you can have a reaction take place in chemistry at low temperatures with a catalyst. The same will occur in nuclear energy once they get rid of this hang-up about having to smash particles together at millions of degree temperatures and all this kind of thing.
Sure.
In fact, I would suggest the first requirement for particle physics and energy production is to really understand how the sun works. At present, the model is gaslight and horse and buggy era theory, which has just been built upon to the point where it's ridiculously complicated, and it does not explain a single thing that we see on or above the sun.
Is this audience smart or what? I'm reading these. These are coming in real time on Twitter, just rapid fire. I'm humbled and impressed at the same time. This comes in from Danny. Says, do your ideas conflict with Einstein's equal MC squared with energy and relativity perception unique from others across the universe? Satellites show it.
E equals MC squared is an equation which has been shown experimentally to work. The problem is that scientists do not understand what energy is or mass, the mass of a particle. I mean, they've just spent, how many, $13.5 billion or more on the Large Hadron Collider to try and understand how particles have mass. That's a complete waste of time. That simple equation, E equals MC squared, is staring us in the face and telling us that energy and mass are properties of matter. The problem for mathematicians is that both mass and matter start with the letter M, and they confuse the two. So they can be explaining something to you about mass and matter, and they'll use the words interchangeably, but they're not the same. Mass is a property of matter, and it's not equivalent to the amount of matter. This is why this comet 67P appears to have the density of wood, and yet looks like a lump of rock. And I'm predicting that it is a lump of rock, and that this will be such a wake-up call as has never been seen for at least a century in physics.
Is there any this is from Gigi. Is there any correlation between Fibonacci in nature and electricity as far as the formation of physical reality in the universe goes?
That's a question for the mathematical gamesmanship people. I don't know. Obviously, there are repeated patterns in nature, and since I'm saying the electric force is the fundamental force in the universe, then there will be a correlation, but I'm not the man to ask.
It is interesting, though, how it repeats itself throughout nature and the universe, and the universe, too, as well.
Yep. In fact, that's how the electric universe works. It works by looking at patterns in the laboratory, and they can be scaled up to the size of a galaxy, and you can see the same things. And I'm saying that we take the atom and we repeat that pattern into the proton, electron, neutron, neutrino.
Right.
And so if we do that, then you can very simply understand the gravitational force, the magnetic force, and so on. But there's a lot of work needs to be done. This is the concept. The work for future scientists will be to dot the I's and cross the T's and do all the maths involved.
Certainly. Okay, this next question is going to help us segue into the fun stuff, and we can actually, take a deep breath and talk about some fun things. Does Wallace believe that ether limits the speed of light energy is traveling through it? With that, I'm going to take a sip of coffee.
Yes.
That's it?
Understand the speed of light as being the rate at which a neutrino can adjust its spin. In other words, it's what's called the moment of inertia of a neutrino, because when an electromagnetic wave passes it, it's like those pictures you've seen of the motion of water as a wave goes past. It's rotary. So the speed of light in the medium, in a vacuum, so to speak, which is full of neutrinos, is the speed with which the neutrinos react. And they're damn fast. And the speed of light is, of course, a very, very high speed. But it's still a snail's pace on an astronomical scale. I mean, it takes 8.5 minutes for the light from the sun to get to us. It takes hours to some of the outer planets and years to the nearest star. Now, if you consider a spiral galaxy, how does it maintain its beautiful structure if the stars one side don't know anything about the others for 100,000 years or more?
That's right. Well, you tell me.
Well, the answer to that is that gravity is not constrained by the speed of light.
Here we go. Are you ready? Are you ready? I'm ready, man. I want to get into this so bad. Okay. All right. Well, hold on. Let me. I'm just gonna. Okay. I'm gonna do some dramatic pause here, Wallace. You have said many times. I've heard you say this myself. That, and you're quoting somebody else, but nonetheless, that gravity travels 20 billion times or faster than the speed of light. The stage is yours, young man.
Okay. There's two ways of coming at this, and the way that Tom Van Flandern, the astronomer, did it was to look at eclipsing binary stars and figuring out from their eclipses and so on how fast the speed of gravity had to act so that the two didn't just spiral into one another in a very short period of time. And he calculated that it was in excess of 20 billion times the speed of light. So the connection between those two stars is effectively instantaneous. Now, when you look at our own solar system, the Earth revolves around the point in space where the sun occupies at this instant. If it wasn't so, there would be a force acting on the Earth which would tend to accelerate it and shift its orbit further and further away from the sun. And the same would apply to all the other planets as well. So that the solar system could not exist for more than a period of time measured in thousands of years. And this is obviously not happening.
Well, let me jump in. I had always thought that we had settled into our orbits because of the mass of each individual planet equal the force of gravity versus its orbit pulling it away from the sun, and the mass is coming into play with the gravity that is being pulled it into the sun, and it was this natural balance that is there. You're saying that is not the case.
Well, that is the case. The energy of the motion of the planet around the sun has to be balanced by the energy of the gravitational field. And this just comes out of the mathematics, so it works. The problem that you have is that the Newton's law, which is used quite happily by NASA for navigating around the solar system, you'll notice it has mass and the distance between objects, which governs the force between them. There's no mention of time. Newton's equation is instantaneous, and it works. Now, the other way of looking at or trying to figure out the speed of the speed of the electric force is to, when I say the speed of the electric force, read gravity, because the two are the same thing.
Okay.
The guy who put me onto the idea of the structure of an electron pointed out that if those tiny particles whizzing around inside an electron, and you calculate based on the size of the electron, and that gives you their orbit. The speed of those little particles, if they were to be released from the electron, he calculated would travel from here to the far side of the Andromeda galaxy in 1 second.
Hence the 20 billion figure.
Yeah, so there's the orders of magnitude are, are close, I suppose, but it's just a huge figure. And Halton Arp, also, the guy I mentioned earlier, who looked at the redshift of galaxies, said it seems that the change in galaxies when their redshift goes through a jump occurs across the whole galaxy. He hasn't found any galaxies with a graded redshift. This also suggests that whatever happens travels across the galaxy practically in real time. All of these things fly in the face of Einstein's speed limit, but Einstein's speed limit, in fact, isn't even a constant. The speed of light in the standards measurement bureaus, and now the meter is defined in terms of the speed of light, so they fixed it by changing the meter. This is sort of a strange piece of physics, but this is what's done. So the speed of light is governed by the material it's going through. It's slower through water and glass than it is through air, and slower through air than it is through the ether. And it changes speed even in the ether, because around the sun, of course, you have this lensing, they call it, of background stars, which is what Eddington went to try and prove Einstein's theory with. It's much simpler than that. It's just the bending of light by refraction. It's got nothing to do directly with gravity. It's just the fact that the light is coming through an atmosphere of neutrinos, or the ether, if you like. All of these things become much simpler to understand. Einstein never explained how gravity could affect light, except on the basis of postulating that light could be a particle, a massless particle. There's no such thing as a massless particle.
If a neutrino escaped at that speed, could it still be affected by its counterpart where it's split from? How far does the electric connection go?
Oh, it's all pervasive. In fact, when it comes down to understanding gravity, you have to understand this fact that the gravity itself is an effect which is due to the existence of the rest of the universe. And to work successfully, it has to have bodies which are, can be shielding this force from other bodies.
Right.
Which is something that Newton's law, of course, never even considered. Newton's law puts all the mass at a single point. Can you imagine all of the mass of the Earth or the Sun at a single point? It's nonsense. So the theory is not complete. It means that there's a whole lot of concepts missing. And the electric universe is an attempt to try and put those concepts back into place so that the whole thing makes sense. It's the big picture.
Well, now when we're talking about the speed of light and Einstein, obviously we're talking about time and time going in one direction, which we're going to get to in just a second. But that time slows down. I have no idea what I would see if I was traveling at the speed of light. I'm not too sure. I've heard so many people's different opinions on this. But anyway, if I was traveling at 20 billion times the speed of light, now what happens to time going in that direction? Time that is relative to me, not to behind me, not below me, or to my right or to my left, but to me physically traveling in that direction at that speed. What would happen?
Well, nothing would happen to time. Time is a universal. It's our experience of the universe is measured by clocks and things, which are physical things, but time itself is not affected. Clocks can be affected by motion or their position in a gravitational field, and this is the kind of thing that is measured and attributed to Einstein's general theory of relativity. But nobody looks at the alternative, and that is that time is something that we measure by clocks which can change The clocks are always considered to be ticking at a fixed rate, but that's not correct. Now, if everything is connected almost in real time by this electric force, it means that you cannot fiddle with time. The universal time, the clock for the universe is ticking regardless of what you're doing, even if you're traveling at 20 billion times the speed of light. And this, so all the conundrums and weird ideas that come about because of Einstein's speed limit disappear once you have a universal time and a connectedness that operates far in excess of the speed of light. That speed of light was a real barrier, worse than the sound barrier, because it stopped people thinking.
Well, and would we even know if we didn't have a watch on what time actually is? If we didn't have our mechanical references to it, your version of time and my version of time, one of us has a long day, one of us has a fast day. Where did the time go? Or, this is a long day. I wish it would get over.
We talk about our perception of time. We often talk about it in terms of a length. Days, it's a long day and so on. But that's a linguistic thing. It's got no reality at all. It's just our perception. It's a bit hard to talk about these things sensibly when people have been brought up to consider all sorts of nonsensical ideas about time. But it makes things much simpler when you understand that the word pictures that were put forward, for instance, about somebody who's on a train and you're waving goodbye to them, and as they disappear into the distance, if you could hear their clock ticking, it would be ticking slower because of the Doppler effect, of course. And also they would appear to be shrinking. Now, you don't just say that time has slowed for them and the space they occupy is shrinking. We know that none of that is true. And we have to hold that idea. So when you start talking about Einsteinian views of time being slowed or time travel, think about it. If you want to do time travel and you're connected with the rest of the universe, you have to rewind the entire universe to go back in time. And that's an impossibility. So... Well,
okay. Let's pump the brakes. Let's pump the brakes.
Being a Doctor Who fan, that's disappointing. But
right. Because, you've just crushed me. But when we look at time going in one direction as referenced to Einstein and the fact that you could go, or presented by him, that time travel into the future was possible. Not necessarily backwards, but certainly...
it's this idea that time has a dimension and that you can point in the direction of time. Well, that's nonsense.
Because if I'm out in the universe, well, actually, here on planet Earth, it doesn't matter. But if I'm floating in space, time now goes in the direction that I'm looking in. Right? Am I correct in saying it that way? Because
the problem is that asking what time is a non-question. It doesn't make any sense. Time is a concept, just like space is a concept. So you can't warp time and you can't warp space. They're just concepts. They're the way of measuring between points in 3 dimensions in the case of space, and the time intervals in the case of time, which you measure with a physical clock or with your perception of time.
Right.
But you can't fiddle with them. They're independent of all that.
Okay. You guys have the Australian dollar, right?
Yes.
Okay. And who's on the $1 bill?
Oh gosh, I can't remember.
Okay, I don't know.
In fact, we haven't had a dollar bill for some time.
Okay, who's on the $10 bill?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay, who's on the 20? Come on, help me out, Wallace. What I'm saying is this: somebody comes to you and says they're from the future and they've got an Australian $20 bill from 2050, and they show it to you and they say, "Okay, I'm from the future. I'm here, man. Can you help me out? I need a glass of water."
You say I only take plastic.
So that's time travel is impossible in Wal Thornhill's world.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about that though, because we are time travelers in the sense that I think we are we represent the intelligence of the universe ourselves, so that we're part of the universe, which appears, as Alton Harp said, eternal.
Interesting. And like I said, you broke my heart. I'm crushed. I still have hope. Out of all of the things out there that we can dream about, and of course E.T. and visitation and are we alone, one of the biggest questions out there. I certainly believe that we have been visited, but a lot. But the other thing for all of us is time travel is something that we've all dreamed about and written about and fictionalized and so forth. And I just want to keep hold of that. That's a dream. It's one of my fondest dreams. I don't want to let go of it.
Well, when you understand the electric universe, you'll have different dreams, and they'll be even more fantastic.
Do you believe that we've been visited? What's your theory on intelligence out there?
Well, it's quite possible, but I don't understand why they would bother traveling physically. They don't need to do that.
Well, certainly, you're right about that, because that's not what we do. We send out probes.
Yeah, but I'm talking about not even sending out probes like that. I'm talking about this connection.
Uh-huh.
The universe is connected. We're a part of the rest of the universe, and that includes living things as well as planets and stars and whatnot.
Have you ever seen anything strange in the sky that you can't explain? It happens all the time in Australia. Have you ever seen anything up in the sky you can't explain?
No, I've kept a lookout, but I haven't seen anything, no. But I know people who have.
Oh, really? Okay. And what's your attitude towards that? Obviously, you're a very open-minded gentleman. So how do you listen to when somebody tells you something like that?
I'm interested to hear all of the descriptions, all of their memories, because this is where the forensic approach comes in, and you try and pick those things which stand out. And if there's more than one observer at the time, that's even better, because that makes it easier to verify that this outstanding feature is something that has to be taken seriously. So you don't dismiss these reports just because you don't believe in them. You have to look at them, and then I think of them in terms of the electric universe. How might I explain this? And some of the ideas that come out of that are pretty mind-bending, but even the motion of some of these so-called UFOs fits with the idea that an advanced technology would be able to modify the inertia of a body so that it can do right-angle turns at high speed and all sort of thing without crushing everything on board.
That's right.
This kind of thing, these are the little snippets that interest me.
Yeah, me too. I'm right with you on that. I had Stan Deo on, who did a lot of research over in Australia, actually. He was on the show last week, and one of the things that he had said about possible UFO propulsion is that it is the craft itself is encapsulated with a gravity field. And so inside of that, you are in your own little bubble. And so time slows down. In other words, when we see these fantastical right-hand, left-hand turns, at these huge speeds, if you're inside the ship, inside the craft itself, you're in slow motion. So when you hit that turn, it's like turning at 5 miles an hour in your car. You just don't feel the effects of the gravity itself. And I thought that was a pretty fascinating approach to it.
That's right. One of the aspects of the electric universe is that because it is an electrical force, we should be able to devise anti-gravity equipment, which would also could modify the inertia of whatever was inside it.
What do you think of Henry Kroll's theory of the moon being captured by Earth, but also bouncing off the North Pole and changing our axis and tilt?
Well, the ancients, some of the ancient peoples recorded time before the moon, so that the moon is captured, definitely. It has a lot of the characteristics of the giant moons of Jupiter and a lot of the surface features of Mercury. Forget about the fact that the densities of the two are measured to be quite different. Remember I said that mass is an electrical variable, E equals mc squared?
Right.
So it depends on the environment of that body, what its mass will register, And so calculating the density of a body doesn't tell you anything about what's inside it.
This comes from one of our producers here. In discussing Dr. Harold how do you say his last name? Aspden's theory that our sun is not powered internally. And I wanted to get into this subject anyway. Your website states that he said, and I'm quoting here, we can be sure that energy is finding its way into heavy ions in a plasma, contrary to accepted scientific principles, and those in authority having concern for our energy future should heed this message. Would you please elaborate for us on what is meant by this theory, i.e. humanity's future energy needs?
Harold is quite right. The sun does not generate its energy at the core. It has a core like any other planet, if you like. As I said, you cannot tell what a body is made up from by measuring its gravitational field, because you calculate the mass, and that mass doesn't tell you what the matter is inside it. Anyway, apart from that, back in the 70s, one of Velikovsky's close colleagues, Ralph Jurgens, put forward a theory of the sun as an electrical body, the focus of a galactic electric discharge. And he did a very thorough job of explaining how this would produce all of the features we see on the sun. And so that's one of the areas that I've been particularly interested in, because this points the way to the future energy production for us. And as a result, we're doing an experiment right now to show that Ralph Jurgens' model is viable. And what's more, that it does things that particle physicists presently don't believe is possible.
How fast is inertia?
Well, inertia is, of course, the response of matter to a force. And because the force, all forces boil down to electrical forces, it depends upon the electrical response of the body. In particle accelerators, for instance, you can accelerate a particle and it appears to gain in mass. In other words, its inertia increases. It's always been thought that this is some magical effect where the mass increases. What the electric universe says is that, no, what's happening is that body, since it's made up of orbiting bits, is actually being squashed. It's being deformed. And the more it's deformed, the more the energy goes into deforming it rather than accelerating it. And, of course, the experimenter looking on says, oh, it's going slower. It must be getting heavier. It's, the inertia depends upon its electrical environment.
Is there a difference, and we hear about this all the time, the pull of gravity on Earth versus Mars versus the moon? What is the difference there, or is it all the same? Am I making sense? And is one star's gravity different than another star, like our own sun?
No, they're all the same polarity. And this gets down to the real mind bender, and that is that gravity may be a push rather than a pull.
Explain. Take that a step further.
It's called Lesage gravity. And that is that the force between bodies is actually a result of the shielding of this all-enveloping inward force from the rest of the universe. So, and one of the good arguments for it actually is that the force on the moon from the Earth is only about a third of what the force of the sun on the moon is. So that when the moon is, when it's a new moon, in other words, the moon is between the Earth and the sun, the sun should take the moon off us, should pull it away from the Earth, but it doesn't. But if you accept the idea of Lesage gravity, where it's a shielding effect from something beyond the Earth, then the problem is solved. So this is a critical area for more research. But the electric universe is saying that all bodies have the same polarity. There's a certain polarity. We're always looking at the negative pole when we're looking at a spherical body. And that has all sorts of implications. In Velikovsky's scenario, where planets came close to one another, in that case, they would get a certain distance away, and then the electrical repulsion would take over and they would not collide. So the gravitational stories of, pie-in-the-face collisions, they always talk about collisions because that's all their model of gravity can do. But the electric universe model has repulsion as well as attraction.
How do we know, and you've actually explained this so many times in the past, so please indulge me on this question. When you talk about the cores of the planets and the cores of the sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, Earth, our moon, and you talk about these, how do you know what they are? Because I don't even think mainstream science is even close to understanding what is at the center of Jupiter, Mars, our own planet, and certainly the sun, the biggest mystery of all. We know what's on the sun, but we haven't flown into a sunspot yet. As far as I know, we haven't.
No.
And
That's
checked
where the
it out.
electric universe has the advantage over the standard model of stars, is that it looks at the visual evidence right in front of our face and uses that to try and explain what's going on rather than making up stories about what's going on deep inside the sun.
Well, how so? Yeah. Okay, how so? Give me an example. Well, let's start with the sun, and then let's move over to Jupiter, because I think that's a fascinating subject too as well.
Sure. Well, in the case of the sun, if all the energy was being generated at the center, it's desperately trying to escape. Yet a sunspot, which punches a hole through the photosphere, is dark. In other words, the energy isn't coming from underneath. I mean, they've worked up another ad hoc barnacle to their theory, which suggests that the magnetic field somehow stops the heat from coming up. But if it did so, it's got to pop out somewhere else. And there's no sign of that. Anyway.
Nicely done, Wallace. Okay, nicely done.
So this is the funny thing, when you get these ideas and you allow them in, this is the first requirement, you've got to allow the idea in. Once you work around and look at the consequences of these ideas, it all becomes so obvious. When it comes to the larger planets, Jupiter and even the Earth, you cannot say what's inside them because, as I said, the mass is a measure of the electrical environment inside that body. In fact, the Earth's gravity must have changed by a factor of 3 to wipe out the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs couldn't live in present-day gravity. They couldn't get up on their feet. Their weight was so great. In fact, when dinosaurs were first found, the fossils, they thought they were waders. That was the only way that they could think they could actually stand up. But of course, this idea was forgotten when they found footprints that showed they were fleet-footed.
Right.
So it's funny, these unfortunate facts get shoved in the bottom drawer, and you don't hear about them until some maverick comes along and says, hey, what about this? So the Earth's gravity has changed, so you cannot say what's inside the Earth. And the same goes for all the planets. Now, I said that if gravity is a dipolar force and all the negative poles are facing outwards, all the positive poles are facing inwards, which means that all of the stories about what's in the centers of planets is incorrect. In fact, there is a possibility they could be like geodes, those beautiful rocks where when you cut them, they're just lined with crystals inside, but they're hollow. And it's interesting from that point of view that there's a recent paper submitted to the Journal of Geophysical Research which says the seismic return from the interface between the interior of the Earth and the center of the Earth, it appears to be rougher than anyone expected. Well, maybe it's covered in crystals. Who knows?
Wow. You're not going on the hollow Earth bandwagon, are you?
Well,
you're strongly suggesting that. It's possible. It is possible. Where did this is from Allison, she just said, where did our Jupiter system come from before it was captured by our sun?
Okay. This gets down to the whole theory of stars. The standard model has gravitational collapse, which has never been shown to work. The electrical model is simple. You look at the infrared telescope pictures taken in these huge galactic dust clouds, and what do you see? Lightning bolts.
Right.
These long, thin filaments, the same width over huge distances. And along them are these glowing beads, as they call them. You know, beads on a string, were some of the headlines. They're the stars. And this is how you form stars, and also minor bodies like planets, large planets. Now, when the lightning bolt subsides, you've got all of these glowing beads, if you like, which then succumb to gravity, and so they will attract nearby objects and they will form little systems. And this is why you have so many multiple star systems and systems with lots of planets. But because they're captured, they can have all sorts of crazy orbits, and this is what's been found by the exoplanet studies. You know, they've got thousands of exoplanets that have been discovered now. Yep. Some of them go fly over the poles of the star. Some of them go backwards compared to the others. This signifies capture, not accretion. Anyway, so you've formed your stars electrically. The electric universe says it doesn't end there, though, because in space, the discharges can be so diffuse that they're dark. You can't see them, but you can pick them up with the radio telescopes. And these very diffuse electric currents continue to power the stars afterwards. And they do it in a very particular manner, which you can see with planetary nebulae, that hourglass shape.
Right.
And the star at the middle, at the neck of the hourglass. And of course, the recent discoveries by spacecraft looking outside our solar system are beginning to find the sun's hourglass. And I predicted that ages ago, and I predicted what they'd find, and it's all been, so far, so good.
Well, can it be that simple, though? Can it really be that simple?
Well, nature is not being difficult. It's we who are complicating things beyond belief.
Not we, them. Don't throw me in that. Don't throw me in there. Don't do it.
This is the problem. The natural philosophers, who were the ones back in the earlier centuries who were trying to simplify things, they lost control when, about the time of Immanuel Kant, when he began to question what was reality. Was it all in the mind? Well, as soon as he did that, he put the natural philosophers out of business. And the mathematicians took over. But the mathematicians are not natural philosophers. They're not real scientists. They're technicians, if you like. They know how to run computers and play with their mathematical symbols. And because they've got a QED at the bottom of the page, they think that God must have been like them. In other words, you know, he's got his pages of maths with QED at the bottom as well. Yeah. That's completely the wrong way to go. The natural philosophers are the ones who look at, they have to accept our senses, plus all the instrumentation we've got now, which enlarges our senses enormously. Take all of that data, put it together, and try and make sense of it in terms of our experience. That is 3 dimensions. Time is a fixed concept. And make things work that way. And also we know that electricity and charge are fundamental aspects of this reality. They're fundamental to all the atoms in our body, to biology, to life itself. We have to understand those things. They're the important things, not whether your equation is beautiful or whether it's symmetric, this kind of stuff. These are concepts that have got nothing to do with the real world. So I'm just a guy who grew up in Melbourne, was as curious as all hell, and used to, if I wanted to learn something, taught myself. And I've never stopped doing that.
You got to keep rolling that rock. Okay, here's a fun question, and I'm looking for a date here. And I've heard you talk about this, and I've also read it. Aristotle wrote that Arcadia in Greece, before it was inhabited, that the land was already occupied before there was a moon. Yes. And when he writes about that, do you have a firm date? Because it's interesting how he would, I want to say validate Velikovsky and also yourself and your research about this. What year are we actually talking about?
Well, as I said, the last episodes, when I say the last episodes, the most dramatic episodes occurred before and during the last ice age. In fact, the ice age was precipitated by not being in our present orbit. But we can't put a good date on that. You see, the radioactive dating techniques all rely on the Earth having been doing what it's doing now back for millions of years. And if that's not true, then your radioactive dating is pretty much useless. But of course, I can understand why it was grasped by geologists with both hands and paleontologists, because it suddenly made their descriptive science real science. You know, it's got maths with it. But this is not the case. The assumptions behind it are flawed. And therefore you cannot put accurate dates on things. There are other techniques which can help pin down the last events, like thermoluminescence and things like that. You can do something going back to the last events, but beyond that, you're wasting your time. There's also the aspect that these thunderbolts of the gods are so powerful that they will generate radioactive elements and isotopes in place. This is why you find rare elements, you find gold and things in places where it's demonstrable that a lightning bolt either shot from the Earth into space or was received from space. I mean, we've got geologists actually looking at these questions and have written papers about them.
Well, and it goes beyond. At what point does we say enough is enough with coincidences? And I'm referring to, you just said it yourself, the last ice age. We're always pointing to 10,000, 10,500 BC, 11,000 BC, the last ice age, Göbekli Tepe, cataclysms, and all these earth events, and everything seems to always point towards Robert Schoch and the dating of the Sphinx. Everything seems to point towards this one time and date.
Yes.
And I think it's beyond coincidence. And here, it happens on every show that I do, Wallace. This date comes up from a researcher doing separate research on a separate thing. We're talking about the electric universe now. Has nothing to do with the Sphinx, or does it? Has nothing to do with Göbekli Tepe, or does it? The pyramids, the Ice Age, or does it? Or is everything just completely connected and pointed at this one date?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing about cosmology. Cosmology is supposed to be the queen of the sciences. It's the world view, if you like, that we have. And the electric universe says you have to accept all the information possible to get a correct worldview. The Big Bang does none of that. It just starts out with some mathematics and a few observations and misinterprets them, and then builds a whole story around it. We go back to these the pyramid texts and things like that, and I point out that the pyramid texts themselves, the scholars have said, they refer to everything in the past. When the pyramids were built, it was a memory, and this was a kind of memorializing things that had happened in the past. Of course, there were echoes down into more recent times, and I think a lot of strange events that happened in succeeding centuries and millennia can be tied down to some of the debris that must have been flying around and causing havoc. But this is the difference, though, between the electric universe model and the Big Bang. The electric universe has something to say from galaxies, stars, the solar system, life on Earth, our recent history. I mean, the Big Bang doesn't even bother with any of that stuff. In fact, the Big Bang, I would say, is like the title of your show. It fades to black.
You would do the one last thing for Dawkins. The one, if you just threw God into this, his head would blow up. That's all you need to do is like to just push him over the edge of the cliff. How's your energy doing? You want to take a few phone calls for about 5-10 minutes?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, I'm going to open up the phone lines. I've been ignoring them all night. 323-825-5045. 323-825-5045. We'll get a couple more calls in with Wallace Thornhill. Thank you so much. I've had such a fantastic time, and I look forward to you coming out here to Phoenix. I will do we'll do our best to get out there and hang out. That would just be
Very
fascinating.
Good. Yeah, it's going to be a big show this year.
Okay, a couple of quick questions while we're on a 10-second delay here, so we'll let the phone call start coming in. Todd J. says, remember that Klaus Dana, do you know Klaus Dana?
Oh, I've heard the name, but I can't remember.
He's got out of place artifacts and things that you can't explain throughout history.
Yes.
Okay, brilliant guy. He says, remember Klaus Donna's Mexican artifacts? Saturn was shown like we know it today, rings included. Can you ask for his opinion? Yeah, these were some artifacts that the dating is still out in the open, but it's quite possibly a few thousand years old. But there's Saturn with rings on it without telescopes. How do you explain that? Was Saturn closer? How do you explain that?
It certainly was. In fact, the cosmic wheel was a representation of Saturn plus the planets in front of it, between us and Saturn. I should say that when you capture a system like our original one, a body like Saturn or Jupiter, any of the gas giants, outside the sun's electrical environment become minor stars themselves. They become red dwarfs or brown dwarfs. In the case of Proto-Saturn, the information that we can gain from the very earliest recollections of mankind about the purple dawn of creation is that Proto-Saturn, we call it, that's Saturn before it got captured and flared up and so on.
Right.
Was a brown dwarf star, and the light from it was in the red and violet range of the spectrum, so it was a purple light and it was dim. And this is remembered. Also, a lot of dinosaurs have very large eyes, which has not been accounted for. So, when it reaches the sun's environment, it's suddenly lost its galactic power supply. It's like somebody shut the power down.
Right.
But it's now intercepting part of the sun circuit, and in the sun circuit, it is no longer a star, it is a comet. And a comet ejects material like crazy. As we've seen often, they split up, they spit material out, they break up. And Saturn did the same, and this flare-up produced the ring and the wheel appearance. It's the radiating material from Saturn that gave these pictures of, the Celtic cross, and 8 spokes and flowers, the celestial flowers and so on. All those imageries you can see on our videos on the thunderbolts.info website, and it's quite stunning. In fact, I'd love to see an IMAX movie done of all this.
Yeah, same thing with Saturn and Uranus and Venus too, correct? Ejections, a slight comet trail.
Yeah, well, Venus was witnessed as being born from Proto-Saturn in the part of the capture. As I said, comets spit material off all the time electrically. And in a desperate attempt to achieve stability, the Proto-Saturn spat Venus out, and it was witnessed.
Okay, I've got a bunch of calls lined up. I'm just going to say this. Caller number 1, this is Dino. Dino, make it quick, and we're going to try to get everybody in before the end of the show. Hi, Dino. Say hi to Wal.
Hi, Wallace. Enjoying the Wallace and Gromit show. I really hope I'm not sounding ridiculous. About 35 years ago, I lived near major universities. I kept seeing graffiti that said, gravity is the 4th dimension or the 5th dimension. I can't remember. And you were talking about this about a half hour ago. Does that make sense that might have something to do with how craft could travel by warping space? If we have length, width, and height, then the dimension of gravity would warp all that so we could travel. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Dino.
I think the graffiti that I liked was "Gravity Sucks."
Yeah, I used to have that T-shirt. Oh man, that's funny.
But the idea of warp space and so on is incorrect. It's invalid.
Turn down. Hold on, Wallace. Turn down your radio.
I'm getting an echo somewhere.
It's the other caller that I just brought in. See, we're on a 10-second delay. Turn down your radio, please. Okay, Wallace. Man. Okay, I'm going to hang up. You're going to have to call back. Okay, finish with Dino's answer about gravity being the 4th dimension.
Yeah, you have to get rid of this word dimension because it means something different to mathematicians to us. Mathematicians, it means a degree of freedom, so it can be rotation or whatever. It's misused all the time. You don't need an extra dimension in the electric universe. Being connected in real time means that you have access to, theoretically, to the rest of the universe in real time.
Let me pull in this next call. Hi, Allison. Say hi to Wal.
Hi, Wal.
Hi there.
Hi there. I am just so happy that you're on the show this evening. I have like 10 million questions to ask you. However, I'm going to limit it to one.
Good.
I wanted to know, is it possible to pinpoint the area of space that our proto-Jupiter came out of before it was attracted and pulled into our sun?
That's an interesting question. There was a fellow called Dr. Earl Milton who tried to do that. When I say tried to do that, he tried to figure out the position of the solar system, say 10 or 12,000 years ago, and have a look at the stars that were nearby. It's a very difficult thing to do because we're not quite sure of what the effect is of these electrical circuits on the stars as they come in close to one another. But certainly it does have big effects because it draws the planet in to sit in the plane with all the other planets, and it also circularizes their orbits. But I don't think we'll ever work out exactly where it came from or exactly where we came from.
Okay, here's the question. Here's the $1 million question right here. So was Saturn Nibiru?
Nibiru is a name given to a fictional object which has not been detected, and there is no evidence for it. The idea, I can understand the idea of having something orbiting at a great distance from the Earth and the solar system and coming in at great intervals and creating havoc. But it would be detected, I think, with the recent infrared space telescopes. It couldn't sit out there and not be recognized. The other thing is it's unnecessary. The proto-Saturn model, and it ticks all the boxes. It fits all of the observations of the ancients, which they chiseled on rocks and memorialized in their huge buildings and obelisks and everything else. It ticks all the boxes. We don't need to invent a Nibiru to do it. I can understand, though, because there are so many mysteries, because the traditional science that we're taught and history and everything doesn't have any answer to these conundrums, that stories can be invented which sound quite plausible. And this, of course, is what has happened. The research that's gone into this electric universe reconstruction of the past has been enormous on the part of several individuals who've spent a lifetime. And they've all come to the same conclusions, which I think has satisfied me that I had physical questions to answer. They must be answered.
Cortana just tweeted a comment directed at me that I have to read this out loud. Cortana, don't be offended that I'm reading this. Well, actually, you tweeted it, so it's out there in the known universe. But she's speaking to me, not to you all. She's speaking to me because I brought up God, right? And she says, don't throw God into it. That's how you alienate your audience and invalidate your argument, meaning me, to the science community. Now, isn't that one of the, it is hilarious that she's exactly right. Her point, we're all afraid to bring that up. It's like, we can't bring that into the picture here. Let's stay black and white. Let's don't. But everybody's thinking it. Everybody's thinking it, and I don't care if you're again any of the show ponies that you're talking about. They may not want to discuss it, but they're thinking it. People ask them about it every single day. I'm sure there isn't a conference that doesn't go by that you do and you speak at. Somebody raises their hand and says, "But what about God?" You know,
we try and get away from talking about those sort of subjects because people have very strong attachments to what they've been taught and what they believe, and that's fine.
Exactly.
I was one of the revelations that Velikovsky brought about for me was the identification of the gods of old. So the gods in the Old Testament and so on, planetary gods. Once you've got a handle on that, then you can release yourself to look at the whole of humanity and its relationship to the universe and be all-inclusive. The problem with religions tends to be, from my aspect, this divisiveness, and it seems to have come from the catastrophes that occurred, because the survivors started pointing the finger at those who didn't survive, who perished, and said if it wasn't for their bad behaviour, none of this would have happened. And so you had this sort of them and us aspect, or if somebody believed differently to you, if you don't believe like us, then you're going to bring doomsday upon us again. So there was this looking over our shoulder, and we've been looking over our shoulder for 12,000 years. It's time to stop.
Dan just brought up a question here. I meant to bring this up earlier. This is an obvious thing to me, and I've always come back to this thought. And he says, wouldn't Jupiter be a better candidate for a brown dwarf than Saturn? I've often thought, I mean, Jupiter, well, first off, the size and its gas are supposed to be.
Certainly.
I had always thought that if we had two suns in our solar system, then, possibly Jupiter was our second sun. Maybe there's another one out there we don't know about. But Jupiter certainly is a perfect candidate for a sun or an older sun. Why Saturn and not Jupiter?
Because that's the one the ancients identified, and it has all of the hallmarks about it, including the rings.
Okay.
The rings, but he's right about Jupiter. Jupiter is a candidate for a red dwarf, perhaps, not a brown dwarf. The smaller the body, the lower the energy output. And, of course, Jupiter still has its little planetary system flying around it. But I think there are separate episodes. The solar system has a history, and it's a history of a blended family. It's not one that was created, 4.5 billion years ago and has run like clockwork since shortly afterwards. That's just a made-up story. In fact, that story is several hundred years old now. So 3 suns, then? Well, the thing is that when these bodies enter the sun's electrical environment, they switch off. Right. Because their power supply goes. Right. Right. That's such a fascinating way to look at it. It again, I go back to this. Is it really that simple? But it is. It's positive and negative. That's it. It's the way that the universe works. That's right. And that's really the bottom line. And when one of these large bodies comes in contact with another, they're going to react to each other electronically. All right, you know what? One last phone call. This is it. Let's make it a quick one. Come on. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Say hi to Wal real quick. What's your question?
Hi, this is Lori, and my question is, I spoke to Peter Robbins, and his theory, and also actually John Lear. I'm actually more interested in that one. John Lear. He says that there are, what he believes is that the beings are in control of us. They're controlling their religions and everything, and they're using Christ and all religions to control us, to keep us in control and docile. And that this is all a great experiment that they're doing on the planet Earth, and that they created us. What are your thoughts on that?
Who knows? You could be right.
Thank you, Laurie.
Certainly the control aspect is one of the big ones in religions, and all the breakdowns into different sects and whatnot is an indication that it's all about control. But I think it's a human problem. It's one of having been damaged in the past, and not understanding what that damage was, and therefore not being able to heal from it. And I think healing is important for our future on this planet.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Did you enjoy yourself?
Certainly.
Was it different? Was this? I just hope that the experience was, like I said, this is open-ended, and I just didn't. I wanted you to be comfortable in your presentation, and I just had a wonderful time, and I feel like we could have gone on for another 3 hours, and we have to do it again very soon.
That's the way it goes, and I quite enjoy it because it allows me to freewheel.
And freewheel you did, young man. Thank you so much, Wallace. And please let us know when you're going to be out in Phoenix. We'll bring you back on so you can announce, and we'll talk about what you guys are going to cover out in Phoenix. And maybe we can bring on Crothers. I would love to bring him on.
Steve has a good Aussie sense of humor.
He does, and he's got a good communication style. I really like him a lot, and I would like to get him on the show, too. Thank you so much, Wallace. I had a great time.
Okay, Jimmy, thank you.
Thank you. The website is hollowscience.com/WP. You can get to it over at jimmychurchradio.com. Just click on Wallace Thornhill. Communication, videos, illustrations, and, of course, articles are all there. Thank you so much, Wallace. You have a great night.
Thank you.
Wow, I just had an amazing time, and I warned everybody this was going to be one of those nights on Fade to Black. And if that was an example of how good it gets, it just don't get any better than that. I'm going to take two. Take two. I'll be back right after this to wrap up everything. Who knows? Maybe I'll take one more call. There's a couple of news things I wanted to get to. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network. TalkStream Live, TuneIn, Spreaker. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. I'll be back right after this.
This is William from La Crescenta, and I listen to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Jimmy Church.
My name is Alan, and I listen to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
He's always giving it to you straight.
JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio, the Revolution.
Welcome back, everybody. Fade to Black. The Tuesday edition. Don't forget, tomorrow, Eric Von Daniken, right here, Fade to Black. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email Jimmy at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Get all of that out of the way. Just reading Twitter here. Liam Boyle just tweets. He says, Jimmy, this is your show, and nothing is on next. I say go another hour, buddy. Liam. All right, Liam, you call in. I'll talk to you for 1 hour. How's that? I don't have any problem. I see going late, but, we have people here working, and you just think it's just me sitting here in the dock yapping into the mic. How would, people have places to go, things to do, maybe dinner at 10 o'clock at night, and I got to go, you know what, we're going to go 2 more hours. All right, everybody, we're going 2 more hours. Just don't get your panties in a wad. We're going to sit here and go another 2 hours. I would love to, though. That's awesome. What a show. Man. I didn't mean to bag on Lawrence Krauss so much and Richard Dawkins, but those two guys get on my nerves, and they just do. Yeah, they're smart guys. I get all of that, and I understand that, but those two guys don't answer questions. They don't. They get up on stage with a bunch of people that, all think like them, and nothing ever goes anywhere. I want answers. I want people to say things, and if you're gonna pull such a strong stance like they do with not only the Big Bang and creation and how the universe started, if you're gonna take that stance, then you got to be able to take the questions too that come in from somebody else. So, I think I know who's calling. You know what? I'm going to take this call. How are you, Allison?
Hello.
Okay, turn it down. Turn it down. It's echoing.
I just called you on my phone.
Okay. Well,
I don't.
All right. Go ahead, Allison. What's up?
Oh. One question.
Yes.
Where did we come from before we hit soul? And does that have anything to do with maybe who's visiting us today, who's been shepherding us, who's been... did where we come from before, are they the people that are watching over us? Question mark. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. I'm going to have to terminate the call. That's exactly the question. Well, I did throw that out to Wallace about, have we been visited? Is there other intelligent life out there? We didn't go deep into the age of different parts of the universe and the age of different species that would be out there possibly visiting us. But Allison, all the evidence certainly points in that direction, doesn't it? And I know Wallace isn't with us anymore, but I will shoot him an email right after the show and ask him that exact question. But, I think my position on that. The answer is yes. I mean, the evidence points in that way. I don't have any definitive facts on that, but it would certainly make a lot of sense. One of the things that Wallace and I talked about after or before the show today was about time travel. And that's why we addressed it also on the show tonight. And I would like to believe, and I would like to keep my feet on the ground in this point, that if time travel was possible, wouldn't we have people from the future coming back just to check on us and just to make sure that we don't screw things up for everybody else in the future, and that timeline stays stable? And I would like to think that we're being watched over for a lot of different reasons. And he completely poo-pooed that idea. Like I said, I was crushed. But that doesn't mean that we weren't brought here from somewhere else. It makes a lot of sense. And that we are being watched over. That's a great question. I'll shoot him that email for you, Allison, right after the show. And I'll read that on the air tomorrow. With that ends another night right here on Fade to Black. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Shoot me an email. Any comments, questions, guest requests, or anything like that, you can email me to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Very simple to do. Just go over to jimmychurchradio.com. All future shows are there. All breaking news stories are there. It's a cool website. Go to jimmychurchradio.com. Thank you to Wallace Thornhill, live from Australia. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show's produced by Hilton J. Paul, Mark D. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, and Jonas. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Fady by Dale. Webmaster is Method of Signaling. Music by Doug Aldridge. Intro by Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Tomorrow night, Eric Von Daniken. Right here on Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Everybody be safe. See ya.